An annual event here on Mastodon Spotlight is our Assistant Coaches Roundtable show, and this year is no different. Stay tuned. Up ahead, a conversation with three assistant coaches here on campus: Mike Harper from men's and women's soccer, Prentice Phillips from men's basketball, and Ryan Peratt from men's volleyball. Please stay tuned. This holiday edition of Mastodon Spotlight is coming up next, right here on College 56 Sports. Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maz. Welcome to this holiday edition of Mastodon Spotlight. As I said a moment ago, an annual staple here on this program is a chance to talk with some of the assistant coaches here on staff at IPFW, and we're happy to have some of the coaches back once again. To my immediate right, Mike Harper, Tonto for Terry Stefankowitz for men's and women's soccer. To Mike's right, the newest member of the IPFW coaching staff, we welcome Prentice Phillips.
Thank you.
Men's basketball. And a face that you're all familiar with, even more than with my crazy mug, to Prentice's right, Ryan Peratt.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, that's up to you. But welcome to all three of you. First and foremost, since Prentice, you're the new guy on the block, please take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself.
From Michigan and came from Indiana Tech, played there, coached there. Played a little bit overseas in Ireland and France, and got an opportunity to coach here this year, which Coach Noel, we sat and probably had 4 or 5 luncheons, and we decided it was the best thing for me to come over here. And now I'm helping out with the big guys, and you know, it's been a great experience for me. I mean, doing something that I love to do full time is great for me. So I'm very happy to be here.
Was your head coach at Indiana Tech Dan Klein? Or Jason?
My head coach was Dan Klein. Jason Klein's the head coach now.
Right, and it's Dan's son.
Yeah, both good people.
Well, we welcome you to the staff and welcome you to the program. Mike Harper, soccer, very good year, especially on the women's side. The first winning record of any IPFW team is while we are Division I at 9-7-2.
Yeah, we were very excited, and if you ask any of our women, they were 10-7 or 3 because they included their showcase win. But very successful year. They ended very strong. I believe they won 5 out of the last 6 games. They beat the MAC conference champs and then turned around and beat another strong MAC team the following day without a day's rest. So they were very, very excited. A great year.
And the men's team didn't do too badly either. Yeah,
I believe they doubled their wins, Division I wins from last year. So that was one of our goals, obviously, to get a lot more Division I wins. And they had a lot of tough, real close losses. I don't believe we got blown out of any games, so they were very competitive, and we only lose 1 player. So look for them to be pretty strong next year. Our recruiting class is looking pretty good as well.
Rock, you've had 1 year under your belt working under Arnie. Talk about that year. You made the transition from working with me to working with Arnie. I'm sure you had a lot more fun with him than with me.
Depends who you ask on that one, too. It was a very interesting year. Obviously, last year, you know, we had some injuries to overcome, especially with our All-American star, Jeff Petak. Mads Bashevsky as well. He had torn his ACL. He came back strong last year at the opposite or right side position for us. We were able to make tremendous strides during the course of the season. We ended up losing, of course, to the eventual national champions, Lewis University, at Lewis in the MIVA playoffs. But overall, it was a really good year for us a year ago. And now we're excited, of course, to get started come January.
What's the biggest thing you learned last year in that transition from being a broadcaster and a former player to an assistant coach?
The behind-the-scenes stuff, the administration. I mean, obviously doing this, no matter what you do, obviously, there's preparation involved. And the preparation, obviously, for volleyball is a little different. I still have difficulty deciphering whether or not I'm a player coach or a coach player or an assistant coach, because I still practice with the team. I'm involved still with training and different things like that. And my mindset obviously is a little bit different than just being a pure assistant coach. And maybe that's a benefit for most of our players, because I can try to relate as I still play and practice and scrimmage with the guys, to try to relate on the court sense or court level on how to play the game. But I think the biggest adjustment for me last year was just the administrative stuff. And this year, I think the biggest thing for me is patience, because that is the ultimate virtue in coaching. And obviously I can't speak for these guys, but I'm sure it's up there because I don't have a lot of patience. And coach has grown in that department for patience, and it's really paid off for us in the long term of our volleyball program.
Let's take it one step further and ask Prentice and Mike, talk about patience. Patience that you have to have as an assistant, because you have to answer to a head coach. Prentice, you to Doug, and Mike, you to Terry, but also patience with the student athletes that you're trying to work with.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
When he was talking just a second ago, I thought about something that Coach Noel told me. He said, don't let the highs get too high and the lows get too low. And I think that is a big thing, especially coming from playing to coaching. You know, it's just a huge difference. You know, when you're playing, you can make a difference out there on the court with yourself, and when you're coaching, you know, you have to actually, the players have to actually go out there and implement it, the things that you're telling them. So I think that's when you have to have a big, huge bundle of patience.
Mike, you're a former player here as well.
Yes.
Same thing applied?
Yeah, I believe so. And over the years, I've grown to, I guess, have a lot of patience, especially living with Terry. We all know Terry, and that's one thing I've developed a lot of. Terry's, you know, taught me so many things, and I'm so grateful. But as it comes, you know, I used to play, and it takes a lot of patience, because, you know, I used to be able to just say, all right, here's how you do it. I'm going to go show you. And now that I'm getting older and slower, it's tougher. So you got to develop that patience and kind of set yourself back a little bit. I know he was talking about player, coach, and all that stuff. And as you get older, you kind of push yourself further away, and you're so eager to get in there and show them you want to go, but it's time to sit back.
The big thing is that transition stage, because
it's tough.
And I can attest to this. Mike is too humble to say this. Mike's the best soccer player I've ever seen play the game, number one. Number two is, as soon as you come out of playing your sport onto a coaching position, whether grad assistant or assistant coach, the respect level from the players to the coach being brand new to that position is a very difficult one. These are your former teammates. These are guys that you played with, guys that you roomed with, etc. And that is such a difficult transition, because you still want to be chummy, you still want to have that kind of relationship, and at the same time, you still have to command respect because of the position that you're in. And that's a very difficult thing, transition from playing to coaching.
Take it one step further. Respect as a coach as opposed to respect as a fellow player.
Right.
And there is a difference.
Yes, because they have to trust that what you're talking about, what message you're trying to convey is going to help them in the long run. And a lot of players, especially, I remember my first year trying to convey some messages to different things, this is how you should do things, but didn't go so well. And then that turns into the patience issue, where you listen, trust me, you got to understand that I've been there, I've had the experience, do all that stuff. And it's very difficult. It's a very difficult process to do.
Let's go in a slightly different direction, and this question is going to be for both you, Ryan, and for you, Mike. You both played for what now is your bosses.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the change in the relationship between, Ryan, in your case, you played for Arnie, now you work with him, and Mike, you played for Terry, and now you work with him. Obviously, they see you in a different light, because you're not the player anymore, but you're the right-hand man.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the subtle changes in those relationships.
Jeez, it's been so long. It feels like there really hasn't been that much of a change, because when I was playing, I almost consider myself helping him as a coach. Yeah, he treated me like that with all that respect, and I treated him with that kind of respect back. So we had a mutual understanding that we were just going to help each other. And you know, as soon as I graduated, I think I took a year off, but came back and started helping him out right away. And I'm sure he looks at me a little different now that I'm not playing, but I still look at him as coach, and he always will be. So,
And I feel the exact same way. Coach Ball and I, and since the time, of course, I came here in '95, always had a good relationship on the volleyball court. And of course, that culminated into something special my last 2 seasons here. Obviously, the one year in 1999 when we went to the Final Four. I understood his system. I understand what he was trying to get into his players, the hard work, the dedication, the sacrifice if you want to be the best. So that transition over to the assistant coach behind the scenes, it probably has even strengthened our relationship, to be honest with you. I mean, we're on the same page in a lot of things, and thankfully, I think playing with your coach actually helps in that adjustment. They're more willing to ease you into the different processes behind the scenes, obviously, and obviously we can all attest to that. Well, the things that go on behind the scenes, it's crazy. It's more than we probably expected as a player. But that helps, and I think our relationship is probably strengthened because of the fact that I played for him for 4 years.
Not to open up a potential can of worms, but if it's possible to some degree, can each of you talk, the phrase behind the scenes, and that's a great phrase in coaching, in broadcasting, in a lot of areas. Can you talk a little bit about really what does go behind the scenes in your particular sport? Prentice, I'll start with you. Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, you got to understand, coached at Indiana Tech, which is an NAIA school, and it's a lot smaller than IPFW, which we just moved from Division I to Division I rather, and it's a world of difference. And just the film breakdown. We never did that stuff at Tech, and I hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, you just have so many other, Jason, which is the head coach at Tech, he has one, it's just him. He does everything. He may wash clothes one day or something, or you never know what he has to do because it's just him by himself. He has one assistant, which is part-time. And versus here, Coach Noel has me, Coach Pachota, and Fred Andrews, Joe Cotton, which is a grad assistant. So, we just got a lot of different people on the staff, and one thing I love about Coach Noe, each one of those people have a pretty much an area of that he holds you accountable for. So it's just a huge difference, I don't know how to explain it, but when you're playing, I mean, you're just playing the game. You're in it for the moment, whatnot. Yeah, you're focused, but you just never know that it's broke down in so many different areas. So it's completely different.
In your particular case, and you mentioned that you have certain responsibilities, as does Joe or Fred or Joel.
Correct.
What are your particular responsibilities with the men's basketball team?
Just working with the big fellows. We got a freshman by the name of Eric Bergstrom out of Minnesota. Working with him, Dave, Thrasher, Kyle. We call him Thrash. But just those players and trying to develop their skills down low on the low block, and just being a mentor too. Just helping them out as far as classroom academics. I mean, our team GPA last year was I think 3.1 or so. So, just trying to blend in. I mean, Coach and Joe and Fred, those guys are great. So I'm just trying to blend in and lend a hand, man. Those guys, I have a lot of respect for them because they put in an awful lot of time. So just trying to do what I can do to help out.
Mike, some behind the scenes work. Again, the viewers, they see you, the coaches, helping your bosses on the sidelines. But when you talk about behind the scenes, and obviously, you've got recruiting, you got phone calls, you got letters, I don't know if any of you are involved in the study tables that, all the teams have participate in. You've got to be jack of all trades and really master of all trades now. But for the benefit of our viewers, what are some of these, some of them in general, obviously you got to take phone calls and meeting prospective student athletes, and the viewers I don't think they realize it or understand it, but that's a big challenge. Anyone want to comment?
Yeah, if you were to ask any of my friends, they would say, "Oh, Harper, your day consists of getting up at 11, going in, taking a 4-hour lunch, maybe play a game of racquetball, and then call it a day." And that is so far from the truth.
At least on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Yeah, we'll give it take these days. But scheduling is a nightmare. And in my case, I have to do both men and women. So right there, it's a huge challenge. trying to get Terry to all the games, trying to get enough rest in between games for the kids. So scheduling for me is probably the number one killer. And then there's just I can't even begin to start. You got recruiting, you got kids coming in, you got to follow up on recruits. And it seems like there's so much that we lose sight of our kids that are already here sometimes. And that's our number one goal right now, is to keep them, keep them eligible, keep them happy, and make sure that they're doing well. I could sit here all day and tell you that just the little things that
We
we
got
do.
time.
So, game tapes, all that stuff. We don't do as much as basketball does, but we do. We've been filming our games and studying, doing scouting reports and stuff like that. It is a little tougher to get the quality of film that you get in basketball and volleyball as well. So, but we are making strides in that department.
Let me take the scheduling part, because I think it's a fascinating subject in itself. In your case, you say you've got two teams, men's and the women's. In a perfect world, I would assume you would like an equal number of home and away matches. Am I correct?
Yeah. The first year we went Division I, it was so lopsided. It was like 15-5 maybe, both programs. Over the years, I've established relationships with a lot of coaches around here. Next year, I believe the women have 13 to 14 home games now. So we're only on the road a couple weekends. The men, I believe, were split about even, 9 and 11 maybe, or 10 and 10. So it is coming around.
When you talk to other schools, do you try to work? I know with basketball a lot, and I'm not sure how much you may be involved in the scheduling or may not, because I think Fred works a lot with that.
Yeah, Freddie does most of that.
But I know in basketball you try to work for home and home, if at all possible. I know, for example, with Oregon State, we had a 3-year contract. We went out there, they came here, and then this year we went out there.
Right.
And Morehead State, they came here, we went there, and then they were here last Saturday night. I'm not sure how much in the future for that.
We'll go there next year.
Do you? So when you try to get home and home, but what are some of the intangibles that a school looks for when you're talking? I know you try to tell them, hey, we got a tremendous facility in the Hefner Soccer Fields complex. What other little things are they looking for to entice them to come here?
Every team that I talk to, every coach I talk to, their first question is, well, can we get in there for the showcase? They all want to come to our preseason showcase event. And so we kind of bait them along with that one. And we've got very good relationships. We know a lot of the coaches now around here, and they're willing to do the home and away now and hope to someday get into the showcase, which is our biggest trump card right now. So we got that going for us, and our facilities are incredible. All the facilities I've been to in the past couple of years, Division I, we have the number one facility as of right now. It's incredible. So teams, I know a lot of the MAC schools love coming here to play us. It's close, playing a great field. They can't beat it. And for travel for them, it's cheap. They can come over, they play us, and we return. So it works out well.
Ryan, you have a little different situation in men's volleyball right now than Mike has in soccer or Prentice has with basketball, in the sense we belong to the MIVA. So we know right away that we've got home and homes with Lewis and Loyola and Quincy and Ball State and Ohio State and Mercyhurst and Findlay, and I know I'm going to forget a couple. That part of the schedule is already preset in the sense that we know we got to go there once, they got to come here. How much do you help Arnie, and what is it that the two of you are looking for? Like, I know this year you're going to be out in the West Coast and you're going to play some, and obviously even today, volleyball, the creme de la creme is still out West Coast. UCLA, BYU, Hawaii, USC, Santa Barbara, and I know I'm missing some others, but what do you and Arnie look for when you try to set up your volleyball schedule?
Well, this is an easy question for me to answer because I don't do it. He does it.
Heck with it.
And that's the best thing. What he does is he asks for my input. Like, for example, going to Southern California for about 10 or 11 days or 13 days or whatever for spring break. He asked me whether or not this would be beneficial for us to go out there with this particular team now. And I thought about it, and I said yes, because of the competition that we're playing out there. We're playing in the Long Beach State Tournament, we're playing USC, we're playing Santa Barbara, we're playing Pacific, we're playing top 10 nationally ranked, very competitive, highly ranked teams. And that was the input that I gave them. Now, obviously, this year, and obviously the schedule for our conference is because we play one team here, then we play the team away. But what happened was this particular year that the first half of our season we're primarily home, and the second half of the season we're primarily on the road. So now there's kind of like a fiasco going on. Why did it work out that way? It just so happened to work out that way. Other schools had different obligations. There are different things going on at their university facilities. It's very difficult to schedule. This year, it just happened to work out that way. Usually we have some sort of balance in between home matches and away, but of course the traveling, the weather, no one wants to travel obviously to Penn State in a 8-hour ride during the snow and all that. So we try to obviously get, if we're going out to Pennsylvania, to try to play both Mercyhurst and Penn State, and we try to combine different teams to play with. And the scheduling part, it's a very difficult process obviously, but this year that's the way the cookie crumbles. From behind the scenes stuff, the first question that you asked, and Mike and Prentice already touched on everything that we do. I mean, the recruiting process is probably the most difficult process and the most grueling and demanding of all, because there are so many individuals, high school prospects, that fall on your laps all the time that you got to keep in contact with, that they send in videos that you need to analyze, they send in all these letters and transcripts and so forth just to get the process started. So there's a ton of those. You can only imagine the prospects that come in. Then, of course, there's our team with game footage, game film breakdown, obviously preparation for practices and matches that we have to do, preparation for our opponents, scouting, all those kind of things are all intertwined. And then, of course, you got extracurricular activities like administration, compliance, you name it, whatever, and that's a full day's work, full week's work, a full year's work. So it is demanding, it is grueling, but, I mean, that's part of our responsibility, and that's the big thing now is that. And I think Prentice mentioned this a bit earlier, when you play, or at least when we played, our responsibility was just to play, prepare and play. Almost like a carefree. You play, you go to school. Now we have a responsibility not only, of course, to ourselves, but to our bosses, to the athletic department, and to our team.
One of those responsibilities that you briefly touched on, and I want to expound on a little bit, and it was talked about earlier too, we have to remember that these are student athletes. And as much as there is some type of a persona that people go to school to play in a sport, that's not always the case, because we have to remember that they are student athletes. 99% of the students that participate in intercollegiate athletics are not going to move on to the next level. And when they get that degree or diploma or whatever, then they've got to hit the real world and try to make something of their life. Let's briefly talk about having to work. You talked about compliance and working with Matt, but talk about how difficult is it to remind the people on your teams that, hey, you've got to go to class whenever possible. You've got to go to the study tables when you're on the road or whenever you have them. You've got to keep that concentration to hit the books, not only to stay eligible from an athletic standpoint, but to learn to prepare them for life beyond college.
Well, it's a very difficult process because we live in a Sports Center MTV age. When you turn on the television and Sports Center has hyped up LeBron James and all these other players that, of course, come out of high school and they're making millions of dollars, it's very difficult. It takes a special individual to be a student athlete. And I don't care, and I think I've said this before, I don't care whether or not you're in university or college, high school or elementary. It takes a special individual to be a student athlete. And I think obviously the way society is going and what I believe is a Sports Center MTV age, because that's what everybody now is focused on as youngsters, that the creme de la creme of these student athletes know that there is no professional future after their collegiate or university career. That they will have to go into the working world, the real world, so to speak. And they understand that, and they're here to get an education and subsequently, of course, play whatever respective sport they're involved in. And the majority of the student athletes see that. Of course, everybody has difficulty sometimes getting motivated to go to school, but that's part of the responsibility of being a student athlete. And our job as coaches, of course, is to enforce that, but, and Prentice said this earlier, also to be mentors to these individuals who, not everybody is a Loy Ball, starting setter, the best setter in the world. Not everybody is a Hector Soto, you know. Not everybody is an Adam Moore going overseas to play basketball. That's not the case. And a lot of these student athletes understand that, and they put it into perspective, I think.
We're almost out of time. I guess probably maybe the last question I want to ask you today is, it may sound crazy, but I think there's actually some meaning behind it. Are you able to have fun doing your job?
I wouldn't be
Realistically.
here. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't having fun. It's a blast. I love it. You talked about there's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. I'll continue doing it. So,
Prentice?
Man, my eyes light up when you said that because, I tell Coach quite often that I'm just happy to be in the position that I am, and I thank him for giving me the opportunity to do what I do. Something that, going from playing to coaching, something that I truly love to do, and being able to do that every day, I just feel I'm truly blessed. So,
Rock, you got the final say.
Our sport is our salvation. It's what got us here. It's what has given us the opportunities in life to be who we are. And it is so much fun. It is such a joyful experience. And we're all lucky and blessed to be where we are right now.
And I'm going to finish this off by saying I've had a lot of fun here today with the three of you. I thank you each for coming in. Continued success in your particular sport, and happy holidays as well.
Same to you, Mike. Thanks very much.
It's been our annual Assistant Coaches Roundtable show here at Mastodon Spotlight. We thank Mike Harper, we thank Prentice Phillips, and we thank Ryan Perrott for joining us. We also thank you for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW Athletics. One quick belated thank you goes out to Jerry Yeagley, head coach of the Indiana University men's soccer team. Closed out his great career with a win number 544, his sixth national championship, and a 2-1 victory over St. John's recently. So we congratulate Coach Yeagley. He was on our program the very first show of the year. That's it for this holiday edition of Mastodon Spotlight. We invite you to come back next week for another edition of the show. But until then, this is Mike Maz saying have a great holiday season and go Dons. A busy week last week on the IPFW athletic front. Women's basketball team was on the road, and they also played a home game. The men's basketball team played 3 games, and the men's volleyball team finally got their season underway with a pair of home matches here in Fort Wayne. This week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight will tell you all about it, so please stay tuned. Mastodon Spotlight's coming your way up next, right here on College 56 Sports. Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maz. Welcome to Mastodon Spotlight, proudly sponsored by Ryan Steakhouse. Happy to have Dave Kennedy and his staff on board supporting IPFW Athletics. Busy week, as I mentioned a moment ago, on the athletic front. We'll start off reviewing IPFW men's volleyball. Coach Arnie Ball's Volleydons took to the court for the first time officially over the weekend. On Friday night, they defeated Rutgers Newark 3-1 behind 34 kills from Matt Zbyszewski. Then on Saturday night, in a match we televised here on Channel 56, George Mason fell to the Volleydons 3-0. Zbyszewski, and I hope I pronounced that right this time, led the way with 22 kills. Dons are off until next Saturday when they play Penn State, a match we'll televise here on Channel 56. Men's basketball team had 3 games last week. They lost to Western Michigan on Wednesday night, 77-48. On Saturday night, in the game we broadcast on Channel 56, Texas A&M Corpus Christi defeated the Mastodons 77-73. And on Monday night, the Mastodons broke a 9-game losing streak behind 28 points from Dave Simon as they defeated Tri-State 93-81. Women's basketball team also had a couple of games last week. On Friday night, they played up the University of Wisconsin, lost 75-59. And on Monday night, they were back at home, and they defeated Chicago State 84-64 behind 25 points from Amy Geralds and 22 points from Varia Bibbs. After this short timeout, we're going to talk more in depth about women's basketball with head coach Bruce Patterson. But that conversation will take place when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
At IPFW, the Alumni Association does a lot more than raise money and support sports, as we'll find out on the next edition of IPFW Up Close. We'll discuss the annual Higher Education Day at the Indiana State House with the Director of Alumni Relations, the President-elect of the association, and an IPFW professor who knows firsthand what it takes to be an effective lobbyist. Join me, Jeanette Liu, for IPFW Up Close, Sundays at noon on College Cable Access Channel 56.
You know, if she continues to spill product at a rate of 3 per hour, unit cost, say 60 cents. Factor in breakage, downtime, lost sales, you're looking at $2,400 a month. Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. This week we want to put the emphasis on women's basketball. And who better to talk women's basketball here at IPFW than the head coach of the IPFW women's basketball team. We welcome back to the program Bruce Patterson. It's been a while.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
This basketball team is starting to come of age a little bit. It had a rough start, but as we talked about before we started taping, let's go back. Hard to believe that this team may have turned the corner in what I'm going to call drubbing to Indiana State, 104-61, a couple of days before Christmas.
Well, I don't know that you can find a nice name for what we did, and that's the second year in a row we've taken it at the hands of Indiana State. And one of the things I think we learned in the Indiana State game was that the aggressor usually wins. They taught that lesson to us last year, and they came back in here onto our floor, which we consider to be ground that we are going to try to protect at all costs. And you know, they did it to us again. They just got in our face, and they didn't let off for 40 minutes of a basketball game. And I think we learned something from that, because we have now, in my opinion, the last 6 games been the aggressor in 11 out of the 12 halves. We had one half that I thought at Air Force where we weren't as aggressive as we needed to be, but other than that, I think we've been the aggressor most of the way.
And when we look back after that loss to Indiana State, the team was 2-8. Mm-hmm. And were the Daubers down a little bit? I mean, this has been an interesting year, a frustrating year. There have been a number of injuries and other things, and the team got off to a slow start. But after being 2-8, what did you and the staff do to get these guys to, you know, they changed almost like night and day because they've played better ever since?
Well, first of all, I think that 2-8 is a little misleading. I mean, you know, we started the season at Kentucky and at Louisville and with a good Ball State team in here, so you had 3 of those games right off the bat. They were getting some pretty good competitions. The programs have been established for a long time and have had winning programs for a while, and so you know that was a little misleading. But there's no secret about the fact that after that we did play some basketball that was not up to the caliber that they wanted to play, nor that the coaching staff wanted them to play. And I think we were trying to make some adjustments. I mean, we lost Hillary O'Connell because of injury early in the year, and so she's taking a redshirt year. The kid that's really filling in her spot goes out on within the first 2 minutes of being on the floor at Kentucky, and she has an injury and she has to take a redshirt year, and so we had to readjust everything to try to figure out who we were and what we're doing. What did we tell them to change that? I'd like to claim that I told them this brilliant statement, and it turned everything around, but the fact is they just had to learn over a period of time that we're still a good basketball team. We still have good players here. We have to play to a style that fits our personality. You know, you can't play to somebody else's personality. You got to play to yours, and our personality is a pretty aggressive personality, and we got aggressive players, and we started trying to take it to people, especially defensively. And though our defensive averages, if you look at them, aren't terrific, some of it's because our offensive average is so high, because we do believe in taking the first good quality shot that's there.
Well, the good things started happening after the Indiana State game. Back-to-back home court victories over Murray State and Morehead State. 78-72 over Murray State, and then 102-82 over Morehead State. And briefly, the Murray State game, we had 4 players in double figures. Varia Bibbs, 27 points and 19 rebounds. That 27, I think, was a career high scoring-wise. And then Courtney Nicely chipped in with 13, Amy Gerards with 12, and Jenny Green with 11. Briefly, 2 players, we'll talk more about Varia in a little bit, and because there's some numbers you want to talk about. But Jenny Green, sophomore out of Lansing, Michigan, she's finally starting to find a place on the court. And I know it's been tough for you guys to find a true spot for her, but she's starting to feel more comfortable, and she's starting to contribute.
Oh, it's interesting that you say it that way, because when we recruited Jenny and we got her in here, frankly, when we first got her here, we saw some issues that we thought would really cause her some problems. She didn't appear to have the greatest foot speed, or her lateral quickness wasn't that good, and we were a little worried about her. But that's before you got to know Jenny Green, because she is a warrior. I mean, she has a saying before every game that she screams as she walks out, "We aren't going to lunch, we're going to war." And she means it. I mean, she means every word of it. She's going to war. She believes when she's on the basketball court, she's going to battle as hard as she can. So we did have to try to find her a place. I mean, that's the kind of player that you want on your basketball team. You want leading you through that process. And, you know, she started out here as a point guard, didn't have the speed or agility, but had some size, so we moved her around. We got her now playing a 4 spot. Does a great job down there. Can she back somebody in and score over the top of them? No, but can she pick up junk and put it back in? That's what she's out there to do. She's out there to defend people. She's out there to make people work harder, and she makes them do that. Both your side, because if you don't work hard and Jenny Green's on the court with you, she's going to tell you about it, and she makes the other person work harder just to stay alive.
Well, she started playing well, and she had 11 points in that game. And then Morehead State, and that's a game we broadcast on Channel 56. I can't recall IPFW women's basketball ever having 6 players in double figures. And in that ball game, Amy had 31, Varia had 22, Courtney had 14, Maggie Bruning had 12, Geneva Murdoch had 11, and Jenny had 10. 6 players in double figures. And I thought what was nice about that game, 21 of 26 at the free throw line. Mm-hmm. And I know that's something that you and Chris and Alan have always been striving. Make points when you've got a free shot, no one guarding you, and no time off the clock.
Well, it has become very important to us, and that's one place where the kids, I think, have really matured. I mean, we lost a ball game early this year. I believe it was the Arkansas Little Rock game, where we lost by 5 points, and we were 5 out of 19 from the foul line. Was really a 1 or 2 point game. You know, you foul at the end of the ball game. So if we make our foul shots, the game was over, and we just gave it away at the foul line. And it has become such a point of emphasis and at practice every day that we are going to make foul shots. That if you don't make foul shots, you're going to run for them, you know, or you're going to do something for them. There had to be a consequence for walking to the line and not knocking it down. Since that time, we've shot foul shots pretty well. I mean, I don't care what game it is. If you go back and look, you know, we've had a few games where we maybe in low 70s, high 60s, but we've had an awful lot of games where we've shot the basketball very well. If you look back at Varia Bibbs, a year ago, she shot something like 55, 56% from the foul line. Up until the other night, she was on a streak where she made, I think, 14 in a row for us over a 3-game period. I have to tell you, then she missed, I think, 3 or 4 in a row. Because I think when she missed that first one, it was like, oh no, and it kind of compounded on her. But her foul shooting has really turned around, and you see a very intense person when she walks to the foul line now, because she knows they're important. Jenny Green had the same problem last year. Couldn't make a foul shot to save her life, and now if the game's on the line with no time on the clock and we got to have foul shots to win it, she's, other than Amy Gerald's, I'd probably like to have Jenny Green up here.
Well, then, after those 2 home court victories, you went on a wee bit of a road trip. It was an interesting trip because you went out west to the Rocky Mountains. First stop, Colorado Springs. You took on the Air Force Academy. And you came out of there with an 83-70 win. And again, 3 players in double figures. Amy with 30 points, Courtney nicely with 18, and then Varia had a double-double, 15 points, 10 boards. A road win in high altitude, and again, some good contributions.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the high altitude, because I was really concerned about that. You know, in my previous life, Mike, I used to spend a lot of time in Colorado, in Denver. 3-4 times a year, I'd be out there for a week at a time, and I exercised a lot out there when I was out there. Maybe not look like it all the time, but I did some exercise. And I knew what it could do to you. And I kept trying to warn the kids going out, make sure you drink a lot of water, and we better get ourselves in condition, because you're going to feel that altitude, that oxygen deprivation hit you. And I kept warning them about it, but it never hit them. I thought we played 2 games where we played hard. We didn't really seem to have any effect from the altitude at all. I thought the first half of the Air Force game, remember I said 11 out of 12, yeah. I thought there was a period in there where we just weren't the aggressor, and we actually went in, I think, that game at halftime down by a few points, or at least it was very close. I think we were down 3 or 4. In the second half, we just came out and took it away from them, and went on a run early, and from that point forward didn't look back. So I was pleased with the Air Force thing, and then we went up to Colorado State, and that's a good basketball team.
And that's a team that you were concerned about. Now, you talked to me before you left on the trip, but the team got on a little bit of a roll, won the 2 home games. You're hoping to get the Air Force game, which you did. So now it's 3 wins in a row and 4 out of 5. And but again, a good Colorado State team. They jumped out to an early lead. You came back. You were only down 5 at halftime, and you're only down 5 or 6 with like 9 minutes to go.
Yeah, it was a ball game all the way up to the end. We made them keep their players on the court and play with us the whole time, and we caused them we did some damage to them. If you'll notice, the rebounding in that game was the amazing stat, in my opinion. We were out-rebounded, I think, 40-36, as I recall. How's that from memory, Mike? Yeah,
that's very good.
That's good. Because it was such a big stat to us. We were out-rebounded 40-36, but they started 6-4, 6-3, 6-2. And and then there were 3, and a lot of the time in the first half, they had 4 kids on the court that were all 6'2" or better. And if you look at that compared to the size of our kids, that's pretty amazing. And they had 6 kids. They never had less than 3 kids on the court. They were at least 6'2". And they were big and strong. Their little point guard, who was small in height, only 5'3", had arms on her as big as my thighs. I mean, this kid was just, she had spent a lot of time in the weight room, and she was a pretty good basketball player. And yet, we didn't take a back seat. We got right in their face. We did what we said we were going to do. We were going to be the aggressor. And we caused them more frustration than they caused us. It's just that when they took it inside, a lot of times we had no answer for that.
Well, after that ball game, and Colorado State won that ball game by a score of 83-70. Or I'm sorry, 78-63. 78-63. It was the Air Force game that we won 83-70. One more trip before you get to come home for a game, and that was a unique trip. You went up to Madison, Wisconsin, one of the craziest places, college campuses in the country. Played in front of over 6,000 fans. Took on the Badgers of Wisconsin, the Big Ten, and they've always had a good ball club. And you still played well. I mean, the final score is 75-59, but your team played relatively well.
Well, I mean, you got to put it in perspective. Wisconsin started off the season playing, they weren't playing really well. I think they were adjusting to basically a new coach that just came in there, and they were adjusting a lot of things, and they struggled a bit. But if you look at their recent past, the game before ours, they had played Illinois and beat Illinois, which was a big win for them. Actually, 2 games before that, they played Penn State, the number 9 ranked team in the country, and lost to them by a point. So we knew we were going into a lion's den, and we better be ready to play. And frankly, the first few minutes, although we were playing hard, things weren't going our way, and we weren't making shots. And next thing you know, it was 11-2. 11-2, and it looked like things could get away from us, and I just thought our kids responded marvelously to that. They stepped it up, and they played good basketball and played smart basketball. At one point, we chipped our way back to the 5-point at halftime. In the second half, there was one point where we had it down to 4 midway through the maybe 12 minutes left to go. It's down to 4. We got a steal, missed a layup, got the rebound, missed the rebound. They take it the other end and hit a 3, and I think that was the backbreaker. From then on, we just couldn't crawl back in. I honestly believe we had a shot at Wisconsin up there. Now, we'd had to play spectacular to do it, but the kids played great basketball.
Well, you finally got to come home for another home game after that 3-game road trip. Monday night at the Memorial Coliseum, you took on the Cougars of Chicago State, a member of the Mid-Con, team that won 5 of their first 6 games, but then they ran into some tough luck, and they were on a 9-game losing streak. Cougars led at halftime 32-31, but briefly I want to go back, and I told you before we started taping, I felt Chicago State came out with some pressure, and we didn't react quite as well as I think you would have liked. You put Geneva Murdoch in the ballgame, and she came and hit back-to-back threes, and at that point, that second 3, got us to within 2 points at 10-8, and those 2 threes seemed to settle this team down and get them a little more focused. And though we trailed at halftime by 1, got off to a tremendous start in the second half and ended up winning by 20 points, 84-64. Amy had 25. Faria had her 6th double-double of the year, 22 points and 10 boards, and Geneva off the bench had 12 points. A big win at home, a nice comeback.
Yeah, that game was, it was interesting in many different ways. I like to tell you that it was absolute genius that I put Geneva into the game at that time. But if the honest answer were told, it was absolute anger. I mean, I know you were at the game and you were broadcasting the game, so you saw me, I'm sure, at the first time out. I was not very happy with the kids because we didn't come out with that fire in our belly and the focus that you need to play at the D1 level. I mean, you can come out and play halfway when your competition is lesser, but at the D1 level, every game you come out there, they're all D1 players that are out there. They're all looking in the eye. They're all can run and jump better than you can, and you better be ready to play. And we weren't that. So and a lot of what I tried to do was I pulled probably my 2 best scorers out of the game, or 2 of my 3 best scorers out of the game at the same time. I pulled Courtney and I pulled Amy because I didn't think either one of them were focused the way they needed to be. And I sent 2 people in, and I was trying to send a message to not only them, but the rest of the team that if you don't get your stuff together, then you're going to come over and sit down too, and we're going to play with whoever's going to play the hardest. And Geneva just went out and responded. I mean, she's a great shooter. When she gets her stroke working and she gets confident, she can knock them down, and they let her have a couple looks, and she knocked them down, and it got us back in the ball game. And from there, I thought we were in control. Even though we didn't really take the lead until the second half, I thought we were the ones that were trying to set the tone, and they were trying to respond to us.
At this point, the team is 6 wins and 10 losses, and it's a nice turnaround from the 2-8 start. Mm-hmm. Real briefly, try to condense what we can into what little time we have left. Thursday night, home game against Wisconsin Green Bay, and then you go to Ohio for a pair of games, Saturday at Youngstown State and Monday at Cleveland State. Quick word on the upcoming week for the Mastodons.
Well, the Wisconsin Green Bay game is, that's an NCAA qualifier from last year. They actually won their first round game against Washington last year, so they went into the second round. And it's a perennial qualifier for the NCAA tournament. It's a Horizon team, and they're very good. We know that. They will be a handful. It's on our court. We expect to win. And that's the way I have to sum it up. I mean, we expect to win because it's on our court, and if we don't do that, then shame on us, whatever happens. Then we go to Youngstown, and Youngstown's another ball team that's struggling. So they've had a lot of struggles this year, and that one will have a lot of pressure on us because that's a game again that we, I believe we should go in and win the basketball game. I told the kids before the Air Force game, I was more nervous before the Air Force game than I was the Colorado State game, as I was more nervous about last night's game than I was the Wisconsin game, because the Wisconsin game, nobody expects you to win. You can just go in and battle. Those are easy. It's the ones where you have now become the hunted rather than the hunter that makes it difficult. And frankly, we feel like we're the hunter on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. So we got our work cut out for us. The worst part of it is that will be our fifth game in 9 days when we finally get to Cleveland State on Monday night. I mean, we played a lot of basketball lately. We're in a stretch right now where we're trying to wear ourselves down. We'll see what happens.
Before we go, you wanted to mention, and we noticed last night in the game notes, a couple of statistical leaders from IPFW and the NCAA Division I stats. Go ahead and mention them if you'd like.
Well, I think it's absolutely amazing that Varia Bibbs, who plays center at the D1 level at 6 foot tall, and I'm probably stretching just a little bit when I say 6 foot. She's right on that edge. Can rank 15th in the country in field goal percentage. 15th in the country. Now, I watched her go against a kid in Wisconsin who was 6'7", who originally, when she came out of high school, went to Duke, one of the perennial national contenders, and then transferred from Duke back to Wisconsin, I believe, to play with her sister at the time. And she outplayed her in every way that you could outplay a kid. People, frankly, in this city don't understand what they got out here in this kid. She isn't the smoothest looking player in the world, but she may be one of the better rebounders I've ever seen and ever been around. She is scoring, and she's shooting a high percent. She's shooting over 60% from the field. Now, granted, she doesn't shoot it much more than 10 feet. If you think about that, you're 6 foot tall, and you're always going against 6'4", 6'5", 6'7", and still scoring on them at will. That's pretty amazing stuff.
Well, other stat, Amy Gerald's 42nd in the country in scoring, nearly 19 points a game, and she's, I believe, 18th in three-point field goal percentage. So a job well done for both of them. Thanks for coming on. Sorry we haven't had you on earlier. I know it's been busy for a lot of people. We'll get you on more. I promise you there. Good luck on the upcoming games, and we'll talk to you soon.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your patience. I should know better and leave my phone turned on, and it rings in the middle of it. I'm sorry about that.
No problem at all. We've been chatting with Bruce Patterson, the head coach for IPFW women's basketball team. That'll do it for this edition of Mastodon Spotlight. Again, thanks to you for tuning in to see what's going on. And again, we want to belatedly welcome a new sponsor to Mastodon Spotlight, and that's the fine people at Ryan's Steakhouse, Dave Kennedy and his crew. We thank them for their support. Again, a program reminder, Saturday night, 7 o'clock, Hilliard Gate Sports Center, NCAA Division I volleyball. IPFW Volleydons, who after the third one in a row, they're going to play host to the 7th-ranked Nittany Lions of Penn State, a Final Four competitor from a year ago. If you can't make it out to the Gate Center, tune in to College 56, even though it's going to be simulcast on Channel 56 and Channel 33. Tune in to see the broadcast, and we invite you to come back next week to see another edition of Mastodon Spotlight as well. But until next week, for Coach Bruce Patterson, this is Mike Ma saying, have a great week and go Dons. You see student athletes perform on the athletic field, but you ever wonder how well they do in the classroom? Over the next 2 weeks here in Mastodon Spotlight, we're going to take an in-depth look at academics and how it relates to athletics. We have some special guests here for the show. We invite you to stay tuned. Mastodon Spotlight's coming up next, right here on College 56 Sports.
Are you in there? What's up? The show's at 7. Whoa.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. As we said earlier, we're going to take a little in-depth study of how academics relates to athletics here at IPFW, and we have a number of special guests both this week here at the roundtable and next week, coaches and student athletes. But first, let me introduce, if I can get my tongue untied, the members of our roundtable panel here this week. To my immediate right, Mark Pope, Director of Athletics, and a very helpful gentleman to me over the last 2+ years. To Mark's right, Matt Newman, Compliance Coordinator here at IPFW. And to Matt's right, Elliot Blumenthal, NCAA Faculty Representative for IPFW. And gentlemen, I thank each of you for coming in this crazy weather. Academics. We talk about student athletes, we see them participate, be it the soccer field, the basketball court, the baseball diamond, but sometimes I'm not sure if people wonder just how are they able to stay eligible. And I want to begin the discussion, and Matt, I believe we'll begin with you, an explanation of how a student athlete needs to stay eligible by NCAA standards.
Yeah, the NCAA, as you know, takes an interest in many different parts of a student athlete's life. Academically, the student athlete comes in with certain criteria met, certain high school GPA, certain test score, and then they become eligible for that first year. To remain eligible, the student athlete each semester has to be in a full-time course load, 12 credits minimum here at IPFW, and over the course of that first year finish 24 hours. If they need to, they could pick up as many as 6 of those hours in the summer, but 24 after that first year. And basically it kind of cycles through like that, 24, all the way through a student athlete's 4th or 5th year, depending on if they did a redshirt season. There are new requirements that the NCAA has in place this year for student athletes that enter college fall of 2003, and we call that 40-60-80. At the beginning of the student athlete's junior year, they have to have 40% of their degree completed and have a degree declared, or I should say a major declared. At the end of that year or the beginning of the senior season, 60% of the degree has to be completed. And then in the case if they're going to play a 5th year, they have to have 80% of their degree completed before that 5th year of eligibility. And those are the general NCAA requirements. Like I said, there are some nuances. For example, these summer courses, if a student athlete had some exceptional circumstances, they may have a chance at waiving those requirements. If a student athlete is in his or her last semester and has, say, just 8 or 9 hours to finish the degree and graduate, they wouldn't be required to take 12. They could do the minimum number to graduate. But in general, it's 12 hours every semester, and we monitor that every week, make sure they're full-time students, and then we monitor it at the end of each semester.
Elliot, one thing that I learned in trying to prepare for this broadcast is the rules for the NCAA are different than the rules for IPFW. Can you talk about the IPFW requirements?
Yeah, for the most part, the IPFW requirements are a bit more rigid than the NCAA requirements. In order to maintain eligibility as a freshman for NCAA, a student simply needs to pass 6 credit hours per semester. At IPFW, in order to remain eligible, the student athlete has to maintain at least a 1.7 GPA the first semester and throughout the year of their freshman year. Subsequent to that, their sophomore and junior years, they have to elevate that GPA up. At the junior level, they have to maintain a cumulative overall GPA of 2.0. They also have to maintain at least 90% of whatever GPA is required for their major, so that if the major requirements are 2.3 in order to graduate, they have to maintain 90% of that GPA in order to remain eligible for IPFW. And we monitor these grades each semester, and we try to determine who is maintaining the GPA, who is not. And if any athlete falls under 2.5, we have some special study sessions and some special activities that they have to be a part of in order to try to pull them up to the 2.5 level and have them have academic success here. So we're instituting a lot of programs to try to maintain the academic success of these students.
Mark, I know since you came on board as athletic director, education and academics has been extremely important to you. I know you have a target goal in mind, if you can tell the viewers what that is as far as what you'd like to see your student athletes do in the classroom.
Sure, Mike. And you're right, we emphasize academics over athletics because at the end of the day, that's why we're all here. The purpose is to return the student athlete from our institution with a decent degree, something that they can use in their future life, and sufficient grades or sufficient understanding of that degree that they can help produce in our marketplace. When I first came in here, I looked at where the grades were, and I thought that it made sense to me to set a goal that I would consider a stretch goal, something that was higher than people thought we could reach, but if we applied ourselves to it and worked hard, that we could get there, and that's a B average or a 3.0. We've been close a couple of times, but we haven't quite made it yet, and that's why I think it stays as a pretty good stretch goal.
Looking back, and thanks to you and to Rudy Ovich, our SID, for putting it on the website, this recently completed semester, 21 IPFW student athletes attained a perfect 4.0 grade point, which is phenomenal. The overall grade point average was 2.95, just shy of your 3-point that you wanted. And yet, it was much higher than the overall student grade point for all students here of 2.81. The women's GPA was 3.06, the men's was 2.86. And again, some of our student athletes hit the books.
Well, I think that's right, Mike, and you know, I'm very proud of the 21 student athletes that achieved a perfect 4.0. That's an amazing statistic. That's 10%. It's actually a little bit greater than 10% of our overall student athlete base. We also had a quarter of our student athletes hit a 3.5 GPA, and more than half were at the 3.0. And it seems like every year the women beat the men, and I don't know why that is, because as I was looking at some statistics earlier, the men come into IPFW with a higher SAT score than the women. Yet something happens here on campus that the women get it and the men don't. So I've been working hard with my men coaches to tell them they need to up the ante, because the last several semesters, if we just used the women, we'd have our 3.0 with ease. So it's an interesting dichotomy. So we're working hard to get to that point, and I think with the great help of Elliot and our folks over at Academic Counseling and Matt, we're going to get there.
Looking at these numbers, it's amazing, especially in this time of what I call transition. 4 years ago, IPFW was still a Division II school. And then we had a transition year, and now we're in our second full year of Division I. Can we go back a little bit? And I know Elliot has been here for a while. Matt, you're still relatively new, but can either of you recall what some of the requirements were for Division II as opposed to Division I?
I specifically cannot recall at this point what they were, but I know that we're trying to maintain those requirements here as well. I mean, we need to maintain academic success. And as you keep saying, we have student athletes here, and I just want to emphasize that the term student is first in our eyes. And we want to maintain that academic success, whether we're Division III, II, or I. So we're trying to do that as well. And again, we've incorporated a lot of programs in order to get that success. We have, during the fall, PASS programs for the student athletes to learn how to take notes, how to take tests, how to interact with instructors and things like that. We have intervention services to make sure that they are on the right track. We're passing out grade check forms 2 times a semester to make sure that they're on track for succeeding during the semester. And if any student athlete's in trouble, we're checking on that and trying to intervene fairly early on in the semester to try to get them up to where they should be. So that since we have moved from Division II to Division I, a lot of these programs have been put into place. So I think that we're much better able at this point to maintain improvement in the student athlete grades and maintain improvement in tracking these student athletes and making sure that they succeed.
With a lot of the good news, there always is some little bad news. And I know, Mark, before you came here, the transition year was difficult. And I'm not sure if it was just prior to you coming.
It was before I was
just
here.
Before.
Yes.
And I know almost every athletic team here was affected by the loss of student athletes due to the change in requirements. And I know that caused an uproar with a small faction, especially the student athletes that all of a sudden lost their eligibility. Let me throw a question out for discussion. Do either of you or any of you feel that student athletes are given preferential treatment, be it by professors or by the coaches or whatever, in order to maintain their grade point in order to perform on the athletic field, as opposed to the general student body?
I think quite the contrary. I think that our student athletes need to meet with their professors on a regular basis and let them know when they're not going to be around. And to be quite honest, I don't think many of our professors are extraordinarily sympathetic to that. They want to see their students succeed, whether they're athletes or they engage in any other kind of extracurricular activity. So they need to make up those sessions. They need to make up that time that they're not able to attend because of away games. And I have never asked for a professor to give any kind of preferential treatment to a student athlete, nor do I ever see a situation where I would.
I would agree with that there isn't any preferential treatment. I think you could find one or two cases each semester, and this would be at any school, including IPFW, where there are a few faculty members that are really excited about having a student athlete in the class, but they won't do anything illicit to help them. And there are probably a few faculty members each semester that aren't so excited about athletics in general, and so a student athlete in the class might view a little bit rougher treatment or something, and those are definitely outliers. But I don't think it's ever come down to anything extra harsh against the student or preferential treatment in favor. But in general, like Mark said, we try and make sure that the student athletes identify themselves, say, you know, I'm here at IPFW, I'm a student first, I do have these contests I have to go to, I'm willing to do anything to make arrangements for that. And I think 99.9% of our faculty are really excited that we have Division I athletics, and they see student athletes taking charge, and they say, that's what it's all about. And I think it's a really high positive in terms of the reaction that faculty have towards our student athletes.
Yeah, we have no policy for missed classes here on campus. Student athletes will generally, because of the competitions, miss classes because of the competition. They still have to maintain their class attendance, make up whatever they tend to miss, and so they're really under the gun and under the microscope probably a little bit more than the general student population is for that.
Mark, I'd like to come back with another question for you. Put your athletic director hat on.
It's never off, Mike.
That's true. It seems like there's a perception, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, that in collegiate athletics today, there's an enormous amount of pressure to succeed, and succeed one of two ways. Put fannies in the seats to generate revenue and win. Win more than lose. You look at the ledger, you got to have more W's than more L's. And I'm sure all the coaches are all coaches are under pressure. But I wonder if you would think and comment, do you feel if there is such added pressure to deliver on the athletic field, might that influence the coaches in their duties of recruiting student athletes, where they may look more towards the athletic part or the athlete part as opposed to the student part?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, there's no doubt that winning's critical to any athletic department. You also have to take that with a little bit of a dose of reality. We're not playing in a situation where we have off nights. The thing that I've learned in the 2.5 years I've been here is the difference between a Division I athlete and, quite bluntly, every other level of athlete. And that is that Division I athlete never quits, never stops, never gives up. You can have a team down by 15 points with 2 minutes to go in the game, and they'll make a run back at you because that's the mindset of a Division I athlete. And And so the wins and losses, unfortunately not enough wins in our department yet, but they're going to come if we develop the right kind of a mindset with regard to what kind of a student athlete we're looking for. I've talked about this in the past and indicated to everyone that my categories for recruiting a student athlete are along the 3 A's. The first and always is academics, the second is athletic ability, and the third is attitude. You've got to have the right mix of those 3 A's in every student athlete, or they're not going to be able to succeed at this level. It's just that difficult. You also temper what you're trying to do with a sense of where we are at the end of the day. How many NBA players are coming out of our men's basketball team in the short term? Probably not a lot. And we may have 1 or 2 that we think are pretty darn good, but we'll have to wait and see. How many professional athletes in the other sports? You know, it's probably not a great deal. So the most important task that we have is preparing those student athletes for their future life in a non-academic or non-athletic category. That being the case, we know that 80% of IPFW students stay in the Northeast Indiana community, and if we're going to stop the brain drain, if we're going to stop the loss of our talented people out of the state of Indiana, it's up to us to use that 80% to better the Fort Wayne and the Northeast Indiana community with good, solid students who happen to just be pretty darn good athletes, too.
I will also say that because of the way that the NCAA requirements are made up, generally our student athletes have higher SAT and ACT scores than the general student population here. They have to take certain core courses to meet the clearinghouse requirements for the NCAA. So most of the student athletes are probably better prepared academically than many of our other students coming in here.
If I can go one step further, we are known as IPFW. That's Indiana, Purdue at Fort Wayne. Does IPFW have the same type of standards that they have at West Lafayette and down in Bloomington, or are there some differences in terms of requirements and so forth?
Well, I think academically, according to the NCAA, there are no different requirements. They have to meet the same clearinghouse requirements, which there's a sliding scale for grades and SAT scores and things like that. So the NCAA requirements are the same. IPFW has somewhat different admission policies than other Big Ten schools have. It's more of an open policy, open door policy, so that the NCAA requirements are the same, but the admission requirements are somewhat different from other schools.
We don't have too much time left in this segment, so I'd like to move along a little bit. And one of the questions that our viewers will see next week when I talk to some 12 coaches and student athletes is, what words of wisdom would you have for potential student athletes that may be high school seniors, or they may be freshmen in college that may want to transfer here, in terms of how they can best combine academics with athletics? And Elliot, I'll start with you.
I think in terms of promoting our programs here, it's a very exciting time for us with the dormitories being built, more of a campus life here. The academic programs are excellent. We can recruit people for any field. We get more one-on-one type interactions between the professors and the students, so that at-risk students will get more service-oriented types of help. I think it's a very exciting time for the entire campus. And our athletic program, we have so many exciting programs here. Our soccer team beat the MAC champion. We're having success all the way around, and I think it's great.
Matt?
Yeah, I think it's important that students that are in high school and they're considering if they want to be student athletes at the college level, is that they first get involved in the NCAA clearinghouse process early. If you go to a Division I or Division II school, you have to go through this thing called the NCAA clearinghouse. We've alluded to that a few times, where you have to take certain core classes and get a certain ACT or SAT score, is to start that process early. When it comes down to choosing that school, you have to make sure that it's the right fit for you. If you come to IPFW and you want to be a student athlete, You have to understand we're at the beginning stages, and that's very exciting, and I think a great hook for a lot of people. But we're not Indiana or Purdue when it comes to athletics, and we're just now getting, as Elliot talked about, the campus life element, a residential campus element. So you have to understand what IPFW it is and what you're getting into. It's a great opportunity. That's why I came here to work, and student athletes should know that's what they're in for. But it's not going to be the same as going to University of Michigan, and those are different places. And quite frankly, a lot of students don't have a chance to be an athlete at University of Michigan, and right now at IPFW you would have that chance. So the right fit is what I'm getting at when you're looking at different athletics programs.
Mark, you have the last word.
Oh, that's great. 2 words: time management. I find that student athletes have a very difficult time transitioning from high school to college because there are so many opportunities available to them that they can't prioritize what they need to do. And we've had some great student athletes with shining SATs and excellent grades in high school find that they don't do as well here in their first semester because they haven't quite learned how to manage their time. Every coach has a study table. Every coach has forced study tables for those student athletes under a 2.5 where they have extra work to do. But that's not going to do it in and of itself. You need to prioritize what's important to getting your academics in shape before you ever make it to the athletic field. But the 2 hours of practice that you're allowed each day is not going to make it either. You need to prioritize time to take the extra jump shots, take the extra free throws, hit 1,000 baseballs, all of the things that are going to make you a better student athlete than you were in the past. But prioritizing those things, putting those first, that's really key to a student coming out of high school and into a university setting.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank each of you for coming. I wanted to do a program on academics. I feel strongly that our viewing public would like to know just what takes place so that our student athletes can compete on the athletic field as well as in the classroom. So I thank each of you for coming this week and continued the good work.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
We've been visiting with Athletic Director Mark Pope, Compliance Coordinator Matt Newman, and NCAA Faculty Representative Elliot Blumenthal. On next week's Mastodon Spotlight, you'll get a chance to hear what some coaches and student athletes have to say about how they put academics together with athletics. But that's on next week's Mastodon Spotlight. We invite you to come back for that. And also, again, we want to thank our sponsors for Mastodon Spotlight, our big sponsor, Ryan Steakhouse, for helping to make this program possible. And we thank Dave Kennedy and his staff for that. That's it for this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight. I invite you to come back next week. And until next week, this is Mike Maas saying, have a great week and go Dons. Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maas. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight, sponsored in part by our good friends over at Ryan Steakhouse, located on North Clinton Street across from Scott's Foods. Last week, we began a 2-part series discussing how academics and athletics correlate with each other here at IPFW. We had the good fortune to have a blue ribbon panel visit us here on the set. Athletic Director Mark Pope, Compliance Coordinator Matt Newman, and NCAA Faculty Representative Elliot Blumenthal were on hand, and they discussed and explained how student athletes are able to participate here at IPFW, what they needed to do as far as grade points and so forth, and what some of the rules and regulations were. On this week's show, here at Mastodon Spotlight, we're going to go another step further. We had a chance over the last week or 10 days or so to visit with a number of coaches and student athletes, and we discussed a number of issues pertaining to academics and athletics. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation with coaches and student athletes.
It's pretty hectic. I don't know, I think it's really difficult to have to juggle both, like especially when we're on the road. I think it's really hard to stay disciplined because we're usually pretty tired, but you have to do it.
I think the success is inside of every person because everybody has a different way of studying. What I do, library is what gets me going, because if I stay at home and do something, there's so many disruptions: TV, friends, phone, everything. You know, if you go to the library, you sit at the, I don't know, 3rd floor. That's my favorite. Quiet, you know, and I know I have to do some stuff. I know nothing bothers me. That's what I do. I go to the library and just stay there and do my job.
A lot of managing your time between academics and athletics is just being smart about the free time that you have. Like, instead of just sitting down and watching TV, make sure you go to the library. And a lot of it's getting away from like your apartment where you have distractions. And the library is a good place for all of us to go. And you can just focus on studying there and just manage your time very well.
Probably just managing your time. It seems that if we're not here practicing, we're here studying, so there's not much of time to do any social activities or free activities. We spend a lot of time at the library studying or trying to catch up on sleep.
Time management, a lot of that started freshman year with coach. Mandatory study tables, unless you got a 3.0 GPA, that's the team criteria to be on study tables. And by doing that, I mean starting that basis freshman as young, I mean it's a good starting point.
We work closely with our team regarding academics and feel it's really important for our team to be successful on the court. We have to be successful in the classroom as well.
As far as our academics, we've been very fortunate to have some really outstanding young ladies as far as very, very good students. This last semester, we finished with a 3.2 overall with 18 girls. We monitor their grades. We do have a grade check. This last time, one time during the semester, and previously we had a couple of them, but we do check with them periodically. I'm very fortunate to have Dave Skelton, Doc Skelton, to also help monitor and also work with our young ladies that are having some problems, and we make sure that if they are, that we find the right resources to help them, and if we can't help them, we find somebody to help them.
Well, each of us are assigned approximately anywhere from 2 to 5 people that we kind of monitor. During this monitoring, what we do is usually get their syllabuses and meet with them 1 to 2 times a week, going over their syllabuses, making sure that they're ready for tests, projects, maybe they've forgotten or something. So we kind of keep on their progress. When we meet after tests, we make sure we monitor and record what they received. That's one thing that we do. In addition, we do have study halls 4 days a week in the evenings for 2 hours. During that time, they're doing studies. And then for the certain people who don't meet a certain GPA, especially in the first semester, what we'll do is usually bring them in the mornings for some extra study hall as well.
Academics get in the way of athletics. They truly get in the way, but it's part of our mission. Therefore, we have to we have to work at it. I believe philosophically, and nothing works philosophically, as we all know, but philosophically, that it's important that we as coaches hold every kid we recruit accountable for their academic progress. I am not in the babysitting business. I work really hard at sitting down with our kids at the beginning of the year and talking to them about self-discipline, about time management, about study skills, and maybe the most important part is, if indeed you don't know, ask someone who does. That might be me. It might be your professor. It might be our academic advisor. It might be the athlete. It might be another coach. It might be another player. But ask, because when you don't ask someone who does know, then you fall behind. And when you fall behind, you lose your accountability.
Well, it seems like the big difference between Division III and Division I is Division III, they really place a lot of importance on your academics because you know, your Division III, it's supposed to be a lesser degree of competition. So we had mandatory study tables all week. Plus, if you were below a certain GPA, you had to meet with the coach later on at a separate time. And the courses were also much more rigorous, just because it was a private university. And so basically the big difference was a higher emphasis on academics versus athletics.
We have a commitment from them at the start of the academic year that if they're a freshman, they're going to spend 90 minutes twice a week with me in study table, and upperclassmen will spend 60 minutes twice a week in study table. And the whole idea is to place emphasis on the academic side. We don't expect that that's the only studying they're going to do throughout the week, and in fact, they better not. But it's to place that emphasis and make them realize that we're taking it seriously, and also to give us an opportunity to monitor each and every one of the athletes on a weekly basis and know what's happening.
What they received. That's one thing that we do. In addition, we do have study halls 4 days a week in the evenings for 2 hours. During that time, you know, they're doing studies. And then for the certain people who don't meet a certain GPA, especially in the first semester, what we'll do is usually bring them in the mornings for some extra study hall as well.
We don't do any type of study table. Kids just kind of do it on their own, and every once in a while I ask them how they're doing, and if there are any major problems, I just tell them to go see Leslie or go over to the academic counseling and try to get some help. And I've kind of encouraged them to get to know their professors a little bit and get a good rapport with them, so if they have questions, they can go in and feel comfortable doing that.
We often, when we're on the road, away from campus, particularly when it's a longer trip, maybe a Thursday night through a Saturday night, so they have to miss a Friday class, we'll have mandatory study tables, sometimes just in their hotel rooms, in a very comfortable environment, and then Steve and I, in a very intrusive way, walk around room to room and see who's doing what and who needs help. Maybe it's something as simple as proofing a paper. It could be something complex like a trig problem, and I don't help with that. But just knowing that it's important to us, I think is important to our team.
Is we have mandatory study tables unless you have over a 3.5 ACUM after one full year. So if a freshman comes in and gets a 3.5, he's still mandatory study tables. So we meet 3 times a week. We meet Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. They're proctored by a coach. They're not allowed to just go and be by themselves. There's always somebody there making sure that they're doing their work. Now, while we're in that study table, we demand that an hour and 15 minutes of it be spent in a book or notes, and that the last 45 minutes they can utilize the computer labs to do their work. And it's just like practice, Mike. If you want to get better, you're going to have to go above and beyond of what the coach asks you to do, and we talk about that a lot as well.
It's more of a merit system. Initially when we bring the kids in, we sit them down, and the upperclassmen obviously know our rules, and we tell them we treat them like men and women, and with respect, that their first priority is to make good grades, and they're on an honor system. We expect a 3-point, and anybody that falls below a 2.5 then has to go to study hall. A lot of the coaches demand a study hall, but I think if kids have demonstrated the fact that they are good students, why force them to do something that is not natural for them? And I think when you get too many of them, we have 48 kids in our program. If you have too many kids in a room, it's a distraction. And a lot of the kids are used to studying alone, and until they do poorly, that's the only time that they're penalized and they're required to go to study hall.
The alternative to study table is accountability. Once again, we check with our kids at least once a week in a team meeting. We go down their schedule because we have a copy of their schedule. We go down their schedule and say, "How are you doing here? What's your progress here? What are you not doing that maybe you should be doing?" And that's a one-on-one situation. I think that is as important as us having study table. Having been in education for 35 years, the hardest thing for me personally to learn was I couldn't educate somebody if they didn't want to be educated. You can't do it. It's impossible. So our kids have to want to go to school. And if they don't, the accountability there is, okay, you don't go to school, you don't play. You don't pass your classes according to the NCAA standards or the IPFW standards, you don't play. And if you don't play, then we find somebody who is willing to do those kinds of things. Now, that doesn't mean we ignore them. As I've said before, I think it's very important that my office is open, my assistant coach's office is open, anybody up and down the hall, but the kid has to truly want to go to school and truly want to be educated and be willing to ask, "I don't know, I need some help." Those are the things that we try and stress.
I think that it's just like anything else in life. Many professors are just very supportive and cooperative, and then there are some people that don't look as fondly on the athletic academic combination. But we're sporting a team GPA average that consistently is at 3.0 or higher, so I can't believe that the professors are too upset with us, and we're certainly not upset with them.
So far my professors have been very flexible with me. Like if I'm out of town, we miss a test, they let me make it up either before or after, you know. They're very willing to work with me, so I've appreciated that a lot.
I would say 90%, there was no problem. But you know, you're always gonna find, you know, different professors, different people, you know. And they all support sports, but most of them, they say, you know, the academic is number one and the sports is second. So there's no, like, you know, you can skip that test or that test. You know what they do, they just let you take it later or earlier. But homework and everything else, you know, you have to do it on the road, and you got to bring the assignments, because if not, you know, you get 0 points.
It seems like you know, we haven't had any problems up to this point. If we do, you know, it's their responsibility, first of all, to seek out what they need to do. You know, they're adults, they're 18 and over, and then if that doesn't work, you know, we do have some other stepping stones that we go through, but so far we've been fortunate that we haven't had to do much of that.
Mike, I think we were one of the first teams to take advantage of the Chancellor's Merit Scholarship. Peter, who you just interviewed, was the first recipient of the Chancellor's Merit. He's a young kid out of Fremd High School in Chicago. He had a SAT score of 1100 and was in the top 25% of his graduating class. And he's maintained he has a 3.4 overall GPA, and just a fine young man. And those are the kinds of kids, I think there's a high correlation between being a good student and being a good soccer player, reading and understanding the game, being a good team player, because the chemistry is the crucial thing in the game of soccer. So we don't just recruit athletes and soccer players, we definitely take a look at the grades. Several of the kids that we're recruiting for next year are going to qualify for the Chancellor's Merit. So it's a big help for us, and it's also a good starting point for the rest of the kids. You know, you've got kids that come in and they expect to make good grades. It pushes the others to achieve the same type of quality in the academics.
I wouldn't give any recommendations to any women's college basketball teams. They're the competition. But other than that, I think that you get what you inspect, not what you expect. And that's what we've learned real quickly, is that if you pay attention to the grades, the players want to achieve. They're already high achievers by their nature. And if you start placing emphasis on their academics, all of a sudden they're coming to you and they're saying, "Hey, coach, I got an A on my math test today." And on the opposite side of the coin, they're coming to you a lot quicker and telling you, "I'm having a struggle with this class. What do you think I ought to do?" And that's just equally as good. We want that kind of interaction.
Well, first of all, if you're a high school student and you need to have a good GPA, you need to have a good SAT, ACT score, and you just need to make good grades. And if you just starting out in school and you're an 8th grader or a freshman in high school, you need to really work. And academics is very, very important. And you couple that then with athletics, and it's a tremendous thing to go to college.
It's all about making sure you have a good relationship with the professors. I think that's something that as you communicate, especially when you miss class, I think that's very important too, is making sure that you go to class all the time. That's a must. I mean, if you miss class, as much as you miss, there's times when you miss when you're in season. If you're here and you miss class, that's a double whammy. So you got to make sure you get to class, sit in the front row, so that you can concentrate a lot more on class and everything, and then study. Flat out study. When you're on the road, in the airport or on the bus, you make sure you study during that time as well.
I think the best word to describe it would be balance. Balance yourself in partying, and balance yourself in playing, and balance yourself in going to school. Because if you let one of those things take you with, and you're gonna skip the other two, you're not gonna do really good. Because it's hard to keep the balance, because it's easy to just concentrate on soccer, be good at it, and everything comes with it. But I think balance is the right word, because you have to do your work, have fun, because college, after college you're gonna start families and working, so that's the last stop where you can do those things. But basically, balance, I think, is a really, really good word to describe it.
Well, one word of wisdom I think we've learned the hard way is that don't get senioritis. So many of the seniors get accepted into a particular college, and they take that last semester and they don't do well. Well, the NCAA is looking at their total GPA from start to finish, so they can't relax. We had a young man who basically got accepted here to IPFW a few years ago and virtually did nothing his final semester in high school, and was just shy of becoming eligible through the NCAA clearinghouse. So please, potential student athletes, continue your grades right through graduation so that there are no mix-ups, and make sure you do the NCAA clearinghouse information on time.
Get a lot of sleep. Otherwise, you're drained in your sport during practice, and you're drained in your classes, and you can't pay attention.
Definitely time management is the biggest thing. Like, you hear a lot of people plug that word in there, but it's the truth. You really need to know how to manage your time. Don't just sit around at your apartment or your dorm room or whatever and just watch TV. You always have time to be doing something more productive than that.
Well, I think it's time management, Mike. It took me a while to learn it as a student athlete. They're so busy, and they're pulled in so many different directions, practice and traveling and academics and social. Social life's got to be figured into a college student's equation, because it's part of what they are and what they do. So time management, effective use of your time, and I can't give you a synopsis on how to do it, but I think the phrase time management is really a cure-all for academic performance. It's one of those things where preparation will cure what ails you, as my Latin teacher told me in high school.
Well, I think you've just got to come in with the mindset that the academic is the main reason you're here. There are very few kids that will come here or go to many colleges that will have a chance to pursue a professional sports area. So I think your main priority when you come to school is to come to school and get your degree, and athletics should be a second thought. So,
well, to balance academics and athletics, we all say this a lot, but it's true. And if you don't walk it daily, it's going to suffer. Academics has to come first. And there are times when we haven't taken a student athlete along on the road, or they have to leave practice early to make it to a class or a study group. And the reality is at IPFW, they're probably not going to have an opportunity for a professional career, but they are going to go on and be nurses or doctors or artists or business people, and their commitment to their academics is very important, and it comes before athletics. At times it may not seem that way because we ask a lot from them as athletes as well, but truly in terms of time they have to balance their academics above and beyond their athletic commitment here at IPFW.
Study, get everything done ahead of time. That way, when it is due, you have time to revise everything and you're not cramming everything in the last day before finals. It's not fun.
Well, we talk about giving advice to especially new kids. I think it's real simple. If you come in with the right attitude and the willingness to discipline your personal life, your personal time schedule in particular, and go to class. I mean, if you go to class every day and do what's asked of you in the classroom every day, school's a breeze. It's not difficult at all. When you don't do those things, it becomes very difficult. If you don't do those things and you get off on the wrong foot to start with, it's almost impossible to catch up. Now, some kids don't ever believe you, but if you can get that through to every one of them, or at least most of them, and they get off on the right foot, they start on the right foot, they get a good GPA to start with, college is a breeze. It's when you get started on the wrong foot that it becomes very, very difficult.
And there you have it, a somewhat in-depth discussion with some of our coaches and student athletes here at IPFW, discussing how academics and athletics intertwine. We hope you enjoyed the interviews on this week's show, as well as our roundtable discussion last week, and we hope that you have a better idea of how it's possible for our student athletes to compete both in the classroom and on the athletic field. I need to thank a lot of people for helping to put this particular telecast together. First and foremost, the coaches and student athletes who kindly and graciously gave me a little bit of their time and allowed me to ask them questions that you saw and heard, and some other questions that you didn't get a chance to hear and see. And part of the reason for that is time constraints. I actually had over 1 hour of combined interviews with the coaches and student athletes, and we had to cut it down in order to make this 30-minute broadcast. And I really need to also thank our director here at Mastodon Spotlight, John Yaus, who has basically been my right arm for 5 years now, putting this particular program together. John went above and beyond the call of duty over the last few days to help me edit the tape and put everything together. So I really appreciate John's efforts, as well as Jeremy Kloppenstein, who was helping to finish this particular part of the program off. So thanks to those two gentlemen, and as always, thanks to you for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW Athletics. Ahead this week on Channel 56 Sports, on Friday night, men's volleyball. The 14th ranked Mastodons of IPFW, coached by Ernie Ball, will be playing host to the 15th ranked Buckeyes of Ohio State. Ohio State comes into this match with a record of 4-3, and they are 0-1 in conference play. IPFW 3-1 overall, 1-0, an exciting on-the-road victory at defending national champion Lewis last week. So it'll be the Buckeyes and the Mastodons doing battle at the Hilliard Gate Sports Center at 7 o'clock Friday night. If you can't make it in person, be sure to tune into Channel 56. Neil Day and I will be bringing all the action to you. Then on Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock, Coach Doug Noll's men's basketball team will be over at the Memorial Coliseum taking on the University of Texas at Pan American. That's a 1 o'clock tip-off for that. And then at 7 o'clock, back here at the Gate Sports Center, Coach Bruce Patterson's women's basketball team will take to the court and to the airwaves for the final time this season on Channel 56. Loyola of Chicago provides the opposition, and hopefully, if things work out, at halftime of that ball game, we hope to have a little senior retrospective for the two seniors on the women's basketball team, they being Amy Geralds and Maggie Bruning. Again, if you can't make it to the Gate Center for the live event, tune into Channel 56, 7 o'clock Saturday night for women's basketball. We also invite you to come back next week for another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. We're going to think spring as head baseball coach Billy Gernon will come over and provide a preview for the upcoming men's baseball season. That and highlights from everything that's taken place this coming week at IPFW will be on next week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight. But that's next week. And until next week, for our sponsor, Ryan Steakhouse, again located on North Clinton Street across from Scott's Foods, Dave Kennedy and his staff, proud supporters of IPFW athletics. We thank them. For Ryan Steakhouse, for everyone involved here at Channel 56, this is Mike Maas saying, have a great week and go Dons. A lot of action took place on the athletic front here at IPFW the past week. On this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we'll take a look back and see what took place with each of the sports that participated, and we're going to think spring with head baseball coach Billy Gernon. Our show is called Mastodon Spotlight. Please stay tuned. It's coming up next right here on College 56 Sports.
Mom, Dad, you know we love kids, and I've made a decision that will totally change my life. Cameron's too. It's a huge responsibility, leading someone into, who knows, communication or science or math. That's what life's all about, right? Learning so you can pass on knowledge to younger minds. Dad, Mom, I want to be a teacher.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, two great names.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maas. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight, brought to you in part by our good friends over at Ryan Steakhouse, located on North Clinton Street across from Scott's Foods. Busy week, as we said earlier, on the athletic front. As is our custom, let's recap what took place. We'll start with men's basketball. Two games played by the Mastodons last week. On Wednesday night, they traveled to Indianapolis to take on the Butler Bulldogs from the Horizon League. Unfortunately, the news not so good. The Dons fell behind 41-20 at halftime and ended up losing 72-55. Junior Dave Simon did have a good game, 17 points and 5 rebounds. Freshman guard Bo Bauer chipped in with 11 points and 5 rebounds as well. Then on Saturday, they were back home at the Memorial Coliseum in a rematch against the Broncos of Texas Pan American, a team they had just played about 12 days earlier. Again, the results not quite as good. The Dons fell behind at halftime 28-22, trailed by as many as 15 points with 9.5 minutes to go. They made a rally, cut it to 1 on 2 occasions, but unfortunately, final score, Pan American 57, IPFW 55. Big bright spot for the Dons, Dave Simon, 20 points, 15 rebounds, and Bo Bauer also checked in with 12 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. And Tyler Clevenger's best game of the year, 9 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. Dons are now 3-19 overall. They have 2 games this week at IUPUI and at Wright State. Women's basketball played 2 games at home. Again, last Wednesday night, Texas A&M Corpus Christi came to town, and they defeated the Dons 76-68. Dons had 4 players in double figures, led by Varia Bibbs with 16 points, Geneva Murdoch with 11, Amy Geralds and Courtney Nicely 10 apiece. And then on Saturday night, in the game we brought you here on Channel 56, the Dons took on the Flames of Illinois Chicago. And unfortunately, the news not so good. Final score 91-68. The one bright spot for the Dons, Amy Geralds, scored 23 points, the last 2 of which enabled her to become the 4th woman in IPFW school history to reach the 1,500-point plateau. Again, a great career for Amy Geralds, and hit a number of jumpers, and ironically, the 1,500 point was a layup, and she had 23 points overall. Maggie Bruning, another senior, had 15 points, and Varia Bibbs 10. The Dons fell to 7-15. They're on the road this week at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. Men's tennis played 2 matches this past weekend. They took on Eastern Illinois and Cleveland State. Unfortunately, the news not so good. Eastern Illinois won their match 4-0, and Cleveland State defeated the Dons 5-1. The women's team also had 2 matches this past week. Again, the same 2 teams. Eastern Illinois defeated IPFW 6-0, and Cleveland State knocked off the women's tennis team 5-1. Track and field, the indoor season going well for the women. In the past 2 weeks, they've had 2 meets at Bowling Green State University, and a couple of records were set. Ashley Ritchie, 2 weeks ago, in the 5,000 meters, had a record of 18 minutes, 55.41 seconds. And ironically, a week later, Lauren Simpson, who had held the record before, sophomore from Northrop, retook the record as she had a time of 18:55.41. And also senior Gina Pruitt set a school record in the 600 meters as well. Men's volleyball, 1 match last week. We brought it to you on Channel 56. Coach Arnie Ball's Volleydons knocked off the 15th ranked Buckeyes of Ohio State 3-1. Scores were 35-33, 30-20, 30-32, and 30-25. Matt Zybszewski had 28 kills. Mitch Dreisbach had 10. And the Dons had an amazing 29 team blocks. You'll hear more about that on the Arnie Ball Show this week. And Dennis Santiago from the setter position had 49 assists. The Dons are now 4-1. They have 2 matches this week. Friday night against Clark College, and Saturday night a rematch against defending national champion Lewis. And that match will be televised here on Channel 56. And finally, kudos to head men's and women's soccer coach Terry Stefankowitz. This past weekend, Terry was inducted into the Indiana Soccer Hall of Fame for his many years of service not only to IPFW, but to the Fort Wayne soccer community as well. And again, kudos to Terry Stefankowitz on this honor, the only inductee this year in the Indiana Soccer Hall of Fame. That's what took place over the past week or so. When we come back from this break, we're going to think spring by chatting with head baseball coach Billy Gernon. But that conversation will take place when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
Hi. I was wondering if you wanted to go out maybe or something, if you had time.
I can tell by your excitable behavior and verbal faux pas that you have generalized anxiety with paranoid tendencies. It would never work.
Okay, thanks.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, 2 great names.
At IPFW, the Alumni Association does a lot more than raise money and support sports, as we'll find out on the next edition of IPFW Up Close. We'll discuss the annual Higher Education Day at the Indiana State House with the Director of Alumni Relations, the President-elect of the association, and an IPFW professor who knows firsthand what it takes to be an effective lobbyist. Join me, Jeanette Liu, for IPFW Up Close, Sundays at noon on College Cable Access Channel 56.
What's ahead for the future of Northeast Indiana? One answer lies with the graduates of our fine area colleges and universities. Hi, I'm Phil Laux, President of the Greater Fort Wayne Chamber of Commerce. And when you support an area college or university, you support the economic growth and development of where we live. Graduates of these higher education institutions are working hard to grow our local economy. I urge you to support your area university or college with your time, your talent, and your treasure. Our college grads are a vital part of Northeast Indiana's continued success.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Well, in spite of the yucky, cold, windy, snowy weather that's outside, our emphasis this week on the show is going to be springtime. And we want to talk about America's pastime, which is baseball. And who better to talk IPFW baseball than the fifth-year head coach of the Mastodons, Billy Gernon. Welcome back.
Hard to imagine someone tolerating me for that long of a period, but it's great to be here. And as I was talking to a baseball coach yesterday, Mike, even though we're, 10, 12 days away from the season, it's a great time of the year because we're 0-0. Just keeping above 500. Got a great record right now, and everything's good except the weather.
Though we're in 2004, briefly talk about 2003.
2003, I heard Eric Wedge speak at the Fort Wayne Sports Corp. He's a Northrop alum, played at Wichita State, head coach of the Cleveland Indians. He talked about his club last year where at one game they started 9 rookies, and that the benefit of doing so for the Cleveland, as they keep their fans, their loyal fans involved in that organization, is that they were able to cram 2 to 3 years into 1 year by doing so. And I thought it really was analogous to IPFW's team because last year, Mike, as we continue to stay enthusiastic about conference affiliation, we felt that it was important to build with young 4-year guys and insert junior college players to fix areas that needed fixed. So by building your base with 4-year guys and having strong relationships, camaraderie, and those things that are so important in your team, we went after a lot of freshmen. So last year we had 14 freshmen. Every game, 6 freshmen or more started. And we had 17 wins with 11 home games. This year, 24 home games. And we were 8-3 at home. So this year with the 24 home games, last year we had 4 upperclassmen, this year 12, and we only have 1 freshman. So it's just a completely different animal. There's just a different aura at practice. I'm not predicting us being undefeated or doing anything that's maybe on the national level of recognition. I'm just have a really strong feeling that we're going to have a very competitive, successful season this year.
Talk a little bit about the fact that as all the teams in the athletic department have growing pains in our evolution into Division I athletics, talk a little bit about the fact that because we're the new kids on the block, you're somewhat restricted in, I'm not saying who you play, but the fact that the big jump this year up to 24 home games, but for the last couple of years, you've had to play on a bus, basically.
Yeah, that Johnny Cash song, I've been everywhere, man. Oklahoma, Dallas, Tennessee, whatever. That was our theme song last year, and a lot of the teams in our department have been road warriors, so to speak. You just want to be warriors, not road warriors. But last year with 40 road games with that many freshmen, it took a toll on us academically. It took a toll on us mentally. It just took a toll, period. Where we had 14 kids, Mike, that once the season was halfway through, they had never played that many games in one season before in their life. So the physical and mental exhaustion to prepare to play 5 to 6 times a week where they were playing twice a week was difficult. Baseball is an animal where it's difficult to create a home-and-home exchange, maybe like basketball does, where we do series. So last year we were at Detroit for a series, and they're coming here this year. Last year we were at Butler, they're coming here this year for a 4-game series. Last year we went to Bowling Green State, they're coming here for a 4-game series. Youngstown State was supposed to come 2 years ago. We had 10 inches of snow. They're coming here this year, and then we're going to return. So this year presents 24 home games, including Purdue and Ball State in the stadium in late April. And then next year, the schedule is close to being done, and it presents itself about 7 to 10 home games. So it's going to be like that until we get in a conference, and it's just the nature of the beast, in all honesty.
Well, let's go on back to this year, 2004. Tell us a little bit about the makeup of this year's IPFW baseball squad.
Well, the makeup of this year's squad is a lot different than last year's, as we said earlier. We decided to go with a 5-captain squad this year. Doug McDonald, one of our seniors, was the first person that I've ever been associated with in my playing and coaching experience at IU. And then since I've been a head coach here, that he was selected unanimously by every single player as a captain. So what a great compliment to a great kid, and he has epitomized leadership, in all honesty, over the last couple of years. We went with five players this year. We felt like some of the problems that we've had in the past is lack of leadership, where maybe if you have 1 or 2 captains and one's a pitcher and one's a position player, if the position player's struggling or in a slump and the pitcher's not up, you don't have much leadership on the field. So we took last year's co-MVP, and he was selected by the team, Ryan Keena, who led the team in a lot of offensive categories. Zach Walton, also a sophomore with Keena. Tyler Fowler, who almost was selected as a freshman without even playing a game. Another sophomore was selected as a captain, David Zachary, a junior right-handed pitcher, and then Doug McDonald. So we have 5 captains that are leading our squad, and they're doing a much better job. The energy level's higher. And we have a second and third senior right-handed pitcher, Jason Horvath, who's been very steady for us since he's been here as a pitcher, and we expect a great season from him this year, along with our other senior, Casey Rohan, who's a left-handed pitcher who missed the first semester, had some academic problems, but he's got everything lined up and in order. He stayed in shape while he was away from the team. And those 3 seniors, as pitchers, are going to be expected to carry a tremendous load for us. But, you know, when you go from last year 4 upperclassmen to this year with 12, you just have to expect more from each other. And I know our team is anxious to go out and have a shot at redemption, so to speak, after a tough year last year.
You mentioned academics, and I appreciate you contributing to the academic shows that we did the last 2 weeks. But briefly, academics is near and dear to your heart as well. And I know you rebounded this first semester from the previous semester. And just to reiterate for those who may not have watched last week's show, academically your team did very well.
Yeah, we did. We just fell short of a 2.9. And since I've been here, Mike, it's probably the thing that I'm most proud of. Because to value academics, I think, creates self-esteem in an individual, which enhances performance on the athletic surface. I really believe that. And it happened for me. And I don't think well, I am different from a lot of people. Just ask my wife, or they can ask you. But I do believe that they're relatives, that academic success can translate over to athletic success. And to have 1 bad semester since I've been here is not good, but we're still very proud that, you know, in 4.5 years of academic performance, our team has been at a 2.8 or higher. And that 2.5 last semester in the spring, without going into a bucket of excuses, was without a question related to youth and being out of class too much. And we've kind of fixed that issue this year, and I'm going to expect a repeat performance this spring, if not even a better performance from our players, because it will be tougher. There's going to be some bus study and some hotel study. So we expect them to perform at that level, and they know that, and we've raised our academic expectations on our program, and it's worked for us.
Before we talk about the schedule, and I'm anxious to hear some of your comments about some of the opponents that you're going to face, talk briefly about your support staff, because there has been a minor tweak in here or there. I know you've got a new hitting coach.
A minor league tweak. Yeah,
tweak.
A minor league tweak. Yeah, first of all, Nick Otte's in his second year as our assistant coach, and he has come into our program having graduated and pitched at Indiana for 4 years and had a tremendous experience down at the IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, where Nomar Garcia-Parra and a lot of other pros train in the offseason, the Bolletary camp, where we go during spring break. Nick has come in, and Nick's the type of person has a great level of intensity, a great level of knowledge, and a great level of responsibility. And he's going to be a fine head coach someday. And what he allows me is, he allows me to just turn pitching over to him without being bothered with it at all, knowing that those guys are going to be prepared as they would have with me, if not even maybe a little bit better. So it allows me to focus on the offensive side and the defensive side of some things so that we can spread the butter not so thin, and that the positions are getting prepared better. He brings that to the table. Tom Tornincasa was just kind of a fortunate thing that happened to our program. We recruited his son Ty out of Joliet Junior College, and Tom actually called me to tell me about him. He's a Crown Point native, played at Lake Central High School, and naturally he swings the bat pretty good, you know. And as we got to talking to Tom a little bit when we signed his son, I said, hey, you know, I'd love for you to come over and share your knowledge with our program. And like a bluegill, man, he took the bee moth, and we're glad that he did. And he spent probably 10 to 12 practices with us this fall and has been associated with the program a little bit this spring. He'll be leaving to go to Peoria with the Wizards here shortly. But, you know, when a guy's been in a single-A Midwest League program as the head hitting coach for 5 years, what he's done, Mike, is he talks a lot of the things that we talk about. What I was most impressed with him is he was able to really simplify things. And, you know, as you go higher and higher, you think there's some kind of magic phrase or something. It's just simplicity. And he brought that, and next to simplicity, the next greatest thing that he brought to our organization was confidence. When they see a pro guy standing there who played in the Mexican League and has had some pro experiences himself, has been associated with guys that are in the big leagues, you know, they listen like Dumbo when he talks. And he's given them some confidence, and I expect us to be much more of an offensive, productive team because of that, and because of the youth not being in the position that it was last year with more veterans returning. I expect pitching to be better because we're going to perform better defensively. So it's been an interesting year. It's been an exciting year, and it looks to be a promising year. I got to be honest. We have high expectations, Mike. We do.
It's the only way to go.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you.
Well, let's look at the schedule now, and in roughly 10 days, give or take a day, from when people are going to see this show, hopefully, weather permitting, you're going to be down at Middle Tennessee State to start the season with a 3-game series.
Yeah, Coach Peterson down there has done a great job at Middle Tennessee State. They have great facilities. It's a great program. Their top 75 RPI ratings. They had a regional appearance last year. I believe they did win the Sun Belt Conference. And it's a great program. It's a good start for us to come out of the gate. By no means are they over our head, but we will have to put a good game together to beat them, and we feel like we can do that. And right now it's 40 degrees down there, and it's supposed to get up into the 50s. So I anticipate that we've got about an 85 to 90% chance of playing that. The next weekend will be the Governor's Cup down in Evansville, which our guys get really excited to play at Evansville's new $5 million complex. That's Ball State, Indiana State, us, Butler, Valparaiso, and Evansville. We drew Indiana State in the opener on February the 29th at 11 a.m. Let's hope a heat wave rolls through the southern part of the state. The chances of playing that one, just based on the weather outside now, you know, a lot of good things have to happen. Then we take off to Bradenton, Florida after that for our spring trip, where we open up with Northeastern, who went to the regional last year and was beaten by LSU 11-8. So they're going to be a competitive squad. We play Boston College, Duquesne, Valparaiso, Northern Illinois, Eastern Kentucky, and Holy Cross while we're down there. So it's a very conducive schedule. Most of the teams that we're going to play, Mike, aren't going to be hitting ground balls as you and I are speaking. They're going to be on a gym floor or a turf facility hitting ground balls, and that just kind of evens the playing field. I'll give you an example real quick. Notre Dame's first game this year will be against Tony Gwynn's San Diego State club, and San Diego State will have played 16 to 17 games before Notre Dame plays one. So I know right now the NCAA has got a committee together, and they're trying to create a unified starting date for college baseball, because it is such a great advantage just to be out, the full distance, the dirt, the grass, the bounces, the ball in flight, and so forth. So, but we're anxious. We're so anxious to get going, and we're looking forward to it.
Real briefly, when you get back from Florida, because I know you want to say some thank yous to some people, and we want to give you some time for that. When you come home, you mentioned Butler, St. Francis, Central Michigan, just the home games I'm going to read off now. Sure. In April, Valparaiso, Toledo, Chicago State, University of Detroit Mercy, Indiana Southeast, Youngstown State, Purdue, and again the 27th and 28th of April, and we'll be together before then. Purdue on the 27th, Ball State on the 28th, both of those games at Memorial Stadium, home of the Wizards, night games at 7 o'clock. Bowling Green State rounds out the home schedule, and I notice here that the last day of April you go down to South Bend and play Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Again, a class program, a good schedule.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's a great schedule. IU Southeast has been removed from the schedule. The only non-Division I game, I didn't tell you that, I'm sorry, the only non-Division I game we have is Earlham College, and that's where Blaine McFerrin, kid that played for me and coached here, is the head assistant down there. So it's going to be Blaine McFerrin Day on April the 1st. And then when he gets here, we're going to say April Fools. It's not Blaine McFerrin Day. But that's the only non-Division I game we have. But Mike, every team on this schedule is a very respected program, but none of them are top 25, top 30 type games at home. And we expect to play the spoiler. I mean, we're going to be the underdog in just about every game, even at home. And with our guys coming out to the field, having done a $15,000 to $20,000 fundraising upgrade with the scoreboard, the inning by inning scoreboard that you can see from Crescent. It's just beautiful. It's just like putting a ribbon on a package, you know. And the 3-foot brick wall that connects dugout to dugout with the netting. We've arranged a 300 stack set of 10-row bleachers to be brought in for the Butler weekend that will stay here the entire season. So our guys are going to be more proud to come out and protect their home turf, and the fact that they're going to be able to play at home in front of their families and not have to sleep in hotels, you know, it ought to make a difference for us from last season. So that we love the schedule. We love the schedule. We even love the road schedule. We really only have one grinder, and that's the Centenary, who the reason that, you know, that was set up as a new mid-con team, and we want to try to stay, you know, as close to those guys' hips as we can so that they can see our programs and either speak highly or highly of our programs when they talk to mid-con officials, and that's the whole strategy behind that.
You got 90 seconds left, and you wanted to say some thank yous.
Yeah, the first thank you I want to give out is to Todd Weir, the store director over at Meyer. I've built a relationship with him since I've been here over the 4 years, 5 years, and he was instrumental, along with Rick Granger, who helped me put together a marketing package to get that scoreboard out there. I just can't tell you how grateful our program is that you got that involved with us and helped us out. Our players are so proud to come out to that field. The other people that I would really like to thank are the people over at the Plex, Bobby Porcelina, his wife Trish, Mike Kahneman, and then Tom Lapsley, one of the directors. And then they have been beyond the call of generous to give our players a place to work out in the winter. We do a little bit of work for them in exchange for time, but they have been so kind to us that it's going to be impossible to repay them or to repay you if you're watching. From our program and from our players and from me, we just want to say thank you for being associated with our program.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
If things work out, we hope to visit much more this spring.
Yeah.
And we wish you well, and we will be out there one way or another to get some highlights this year. But
yeah.
We wish you well in this upcoming season.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here as always.
We've been visiting with Billy Gernon, the head baseball coach here at IPFW. And that's about to do it for this edition of Mastodon Spotlight. A quick program reminder, Saturday night, 14th, 7 o'clock, IPFW Volleydon is going to play host to the defending NCAA champion Lewis Flyers, a rematch of a match that was played in Romeoville, Illinois. I'm going to cut my tongue out. About 10 days ago, the Volleydons won that match in 4 games. The rematch is Saturday night. If you can't make it out to the Gate Center, tune in to College 56 Sports. Neil Day and I will bring you all the action beginning at 7 p.m. Again, thanks for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW Athletics. We invite you to come back again next week for another edition of Mastodon Spotlight. But until next week, for the coach Billy Gernon and for our sponsor, Ryan Steakhouse, this is Mike Ma saying have a great week and go Dons. this past week. The IPFW men's and women's basketball teams were on the road, as well as the women's tennis team, and the men's volleyball team was at home. On this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we'll take a look back and see how each of those teams progressed, and we'll take an in-depth look at men's and women's tennis with head coach Eric Burns, and a special interview with a freshman men's tennis player from Monterrey, Mexico. All that and more on Mastodon Spotlight. Please stay tuned. It's coming up next right here on College 56 Sports. Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maz. Welcome to another edition of Mastodon Spotlight, brought to you in part by our good friends over at Ryan's Steakhouse, located on North Clinton Street, across from Scott's Foods. Busy week as always here at IPFW, and let's get right to our weekly recap. We'll start with men's basketball. Men's basketball team was on the road last week. On Wednesday, they traveled down to Indianapolis to take on the Jaguars from IUPUI, first place team in the Mid-Con. The result, not so good. Mastodons lose 81-59. They were in it for about the first 6 or 7 minutes, and then gradually IUPUI pulled away. They led by 14 at halftime and stretched it out. Final score 81-59. Two bright spots for IPFW. Junior David Simon, 22 points, 10 rebounds. Senior Jim Kesnick, best game of the year off the bench, 22 points and 9 rebounds. Again, final IUPUI 81, IPFW 59. Saturday, they traveled to Dayton, Ohio, where they took on the Wright State Raiders from the Horizon League. These two teams played last year here in Fort Wayne on Senior Day. Mastodons won big, so the Raiders were out for revenge. Tough game. IPFW led at the half, 33-30. They had an 8, even a 9-point lead early in the second half. Raiders came back, and it was a dogfight down the stretch. Keon Henderson made 2 free throws with a minute to go to give the Mastodons a 1-point lead. But Fort Wayne Northside graduate Bernard Howens for Wright State hit a pair of free throws to give Wright State the lead with 31 seconds to go. Byron Malone had a good look at a 16-footer, came up short. Mastodons fell 66-64. Keon Henderson, a career-high 23 points, including 5 three-pointers. Dave Simon, 18 points and 13 rebounds, another double-double. I believe that's it's either his 12th or 13th double-double of the year. Unfortunately, again, 66-64, Mastodons fall. And they have one game this week, and that's on Tuesday night. It's already would have been played as you see this, against Florida Gulf Coast. We'll tell you how that turned out on next week's show. Women's basketball, Bruce Patterson's squad on the road up in the state of Wisconsin for a pair of games. On Thursday night, they took on University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee from the Horizon League, and unfortunately fell on the short end of an 87-67 score. Amy Geralds, the senior forward from Beech Grove, 20 points, 6 steals, 15 points for Geneva Murdoch, 11 points for Maggie Bruning, but just too little too late. Final score 87-67, UW-Milwaukee on top. On Saturday, they traveled to Green Bay, a rematch against the Phoenix. These two teams played earlier in the year here in Fort Wayne, and Wisconsin-Green Bay won 80-71. This time, not as close. Green Bay on top, 77-54. One of the key elements, Green Bay held Amy Geralds to just 2 points, both made on free throws. Amy 0 for 9 from the field, frustrated, and the rest of the team tried. Courtney Nicely, a season-high 19 points. Varia Bibbs, 13 points, 15 rebounds, but not enough, 77-54, and they fall there. Men's volleyball, 2 matches. We're going to show you some highlights briefly. Friday night, they defeated Clark College in 3 games. Scores were 30-18, 30-17, and 30-15. We're going to show you briefly highlights of Game 2, where the Volleydons started off winning the first 7 points. They won the first point on a service error, and then Mike Dyga, the Columbus, Ohio native, got the serve, ripped off 6 in a row. That set the tone for game 2. Again, the Dons win it in 3, 30-18, 30-17, 30-15. Then on Saturday night, a match you saw here on Channel 56, Lewis, defending national champion Flyers, came to town, and the Valley Dons did it again. Second time this year they defeated Lewis. Scores were 30-14, 30-27, 30-27. Matt Zubchevsky with 14 kills and 12 digs. Serdar Sikcha with 10 kills and 7 block assists. And Dennis Santiago, 39 assists and 5 digs. Valley Dons now 6-1 overall, 4-0 in the MIVA, first place. That's volleyball. And finally, the women's tennis team lost to the University of Dayton 7-0 on Friday. They fought a 7-8 overall on the season. When we come back, we're going to have an in-depth talk with head coach Eric Burns about women's tennis and men's tennis as well. That's when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
Are you in there? What's up? The show's at 7. Whoa.
Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, 2 great names.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Well, in spite of the weather, the way it looks outside, cold, snowy, icy, a little bit windy as well, this week we're going to talk about tennis. And with us to talk tennis is the head coach for both the men's and women's tennis teams here at IPFW, Eric Burns. Welcome back, first and foremost.
Thanks for having me on again.
Here we are in the, I don't want to say dead of winter, but we're in February and it's cold outside, and yet your teams have been playing tennis now for several weeks.
Yeah, we're playing a lot of indoor tennis these days, and we're doing the 7 a.m. practices and all the good stuff that goes with spring tennis.
Before we talk about the tennis teams and what's happened so far, I want to belatedly thank you for helping us on our shows on academics with athletics. And I want to compliment you. Your 2 teams, the men's and women's tennis teams, had the highest grade point averages of any athletic teams here on campus. 3.23 for the men's team first semester and 3.57 for the women's teams. Kudos to you. What was the secrets to getting these kids to study?
Well, I think they're all just motivated kids. I mean, they're here to get their degree, and those are really the kind of kids I recruit, so I think that helps things along the way too. But they know they're expected to do well in the classroom, and I'm just really proud of all of them. Everyone had good performances this semester, and hopefully we'll keep those up. Our goal is to get a 3.2 as a team for the year and get the ITA All-Team Award, so, and then have as many ITA All-Academic players as we can get. So.
And for the benefit of our viewers, what does ITA stand for?
ITA is the Intercollegiate Tennis Association. We got that on the women's side last year for team, and also had, I believe, 5 girls that got that award. So, you know, it's a good honor. It's the highest honor in our sport.
Well, congratulations again. Now let's talk about what they've been doing on the court. And as you alluded to, with the weather bad on the outside, you're having to start the spring part of your season on the indoors. And if you look at the results from a one-loss standpoint, they haven't been as good as what I know you would like. But you and I have talked in the past on this program. Sometimes it's not who wins or loses, it's how the game is played and how a student athlete develops, reacts, and adjusts. And I would think you would still feel the same way right now.
I think the results so far have been pretty promising. We're playing some good matches with some teams that 2 years ago would have just run us off the court in an hour or two, and and now we're actually competitive for those teams and have chances to win. And so I think we've come a long way in that aspect, but we've got to get tougher mentally and learn to close those kind of matches out. When we've got opportunities, we've got to take advantage of them. And I think that's something we just don't do at this point. We've just got to keep being in those opportunities, having those opportunities, and learn.
Let's talk first from the women's side. Spring portion of the season, you started off in late January. You took on Ball State, and they defeated you, unfortunately, 7-0. And then February the 7th, I believe, or 8th, you were a home match in Warsaw, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you had two opponents, Cleveland State from the Horizon League and Eastern Illinois. And unfortunately, the women lost to Cleveland State 5-1 and to Eastern Illinois 6-0. And then I believe you just had a match.
Actually, we had a Wright State match in there as well.
With the women?
Yes.
As well, okay. And then last weekend, I believe, you were defeated by University of Dayton.
Yes.
But overall, counting the fall season, you're 7-8 at this point.
Yes.
I guess my first question to you is, how are you determining who's playing singles and who's playing doubles?
Well, we've got an interesting group. We've got 2 seniors, a junior, and 1 sophomore, or actually a couple sophomores, and the rest are freshmen or first-year players. And you know, I'm going with my experience toward the top of the lineup, 1, 2, and 3. I've got a senior, junior, senior playing those spots. From there, we're going with the younger players, 4, 5, and 6. I mean, really, our team is made up of a lot of players of equal ability. We've got a really good one who's a little bit stronger than the rest of the players. After that, everyone's pretty even. And so I'm going with my more experienced players at the top of the lineup and the younger players at the bottom. Our strengths are 1, 4, 5, and 6. 2 and 3 are always going to be tough spots for us. From a scholarship standpoint, we're not equal compared to some of the teams we play. And so, you know, a lot of teams we play have players at 2 and 3 that are as strong as their 1. And so it's tough to match up with that. But we've got some good girls that play 2 and 3 and give it a good effort every time out. And, you know, if they're hot and they're on, then we've got a good shot. If not, then it could be a quick day. But we're developing some girls toward the bottom of the lineup that are getting really consistent, the younger players. And I'd say those are our strengths.
And on the men's side as well, again, Wright State, Eastern Illinois, Cleveland State, you've had those matches already. And score-wise, we didn't win the matches, but at least they're trying to be competitive.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the men as well.
Well, I think the Wright State match was very encouraging. We were up the whole time in that match. Got the doubles point. Had a set at 3 other matches. Won the first set, and then ended up losing a couple of those, and lost a 5-2 match. That really, we could have won 5-2. It could have gone either way. So that was very encouraging. That Wright State's a pretty strong team in the Horizon. They're usually top 3, top 4 in that area, and a very good team. And so I thought we played really well. Our doubles play has been outstanding so far. We've just played great in doubles, and that was a weakness that we had in the fall, so we picked it up. We're just finding it a little tough to close out some singles matches. We get early leads, and maybe our mind goes somewhere else in the second set, and we find ourselves in a dogfight in a third set. So same way with Cleveland State. Match could have gone either way. We're a breakdown in each set of those matches that we lost. Carlos loses in a third set tiebreaker. It was nip and tuck the whole match. So I mean, they beat us 5-1, but it very easily could have been 5-1 us. And that's the thing, especially on the men's side. Every position is just so competitive, and if you're on that day, you win. If you're not, you're in trouble. And scores could be flip-flopped. We beat them 4-3 in the fall. They came back and got us 5-1 in the spring. So it's just who brings it that day.
Unique situation with the men's team is that you are in the second year of an agreement as a member of the Mid-American Conference.
Yep.
That's a tough league, as you found out last year.
Right. There's 3 nationally ranked teams in the Mid-American Conference: Northern Illinois, Ball State, and Western Michigan. And those those three teams are outstanding teams, worthy of playing Big Ten opponents close and beating Big Ten opponents. So it's a tough league. I think a lot of people think of the MAC as just a little mid-major conference, but I'll tell you what, in tennis, any of those three teams could be in the Big Ten and compete well. So we have a tough league, and Toledo and Buffalo are no slouches either. They're good teams as well. So it's a tough league.
Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up for your tennis teams. I think up next this weekend, I know the women here are going to be playing University of Detroit Mercy. First and foremost, I have to ask, I mentioned earlier, home matches, at least for the indoor side of things, you're having to play in Warsaw.
Yeah. Well, we have trouble getting court time at Wildwood, enough to have a match. You need 6 courts and a big block of time, at least 3 or 4 hours to play a match. And they've just got so many members out there. They're the only club in town as of right now. And we just can't get any agreement going with them to where we can come in and play our matches. We got lucky with the Wright State match and could play it there. It was a Saturday night, and some things were kind of dead around there, and they had just had a fundraising tournament, and they had some open court time. But for the most part, we're not having much luck.
Well, the women, the next few weeks, as I said, Detroit Mercy, Wisconsin and Milwaukee, then a couple of more home matches the first part of March with Lipscomb and Butler. And on the men's side, you've got, you're going to go not till towards the end of the month, St. Francis of PA, Robert Morris, Youngstown State, all on the road before you come back on the first weekend in March and play Lipscomb at home. So briefly, in the remaining time we've got in this segment, what do you look forward to in the next 3 or 4 matches?
Well, I look for us to come out prepared and ready to go in these matches. These are all winnable matches. And if our teams show up ready to play, we should have great success. But we've got to be there mentally, and we've got to be determined and motivated to play these matches. Otherwise, these teams can slip up and get us. But I look for good things. We've just got to put it together here in the next couple of weeks.
We wish you well, and we look forward to talking to you periodically throughout the spring. Hopefully, when the weather gets warm and you get some home matches, we'll be able to get out with the camera and try to get some highlights.
Yeah,
but,
that might not be till April. Or
it may not be, but congratulations on getting the season off to a start, and good luck in the weeks ahead.
All right, thank you.
We've been chatting with Eric Burns, the head coach for both men's and women's tennis here at IPFW. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to a member of the men's tennis team, a freshman from Monterrey, Mexico, of all places. Sunny and warm Mexico, Carlos Gonzalez. We're going to ask him how he ended up in cold and snowy Fort Wayne. But that's when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
If she continues to spill product at a rate of 3 per hour, unit cost, say 60 cents. Factor in breakage, downtime, lost sales, you're looking at $2,400 a month. Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. One university, 2 great names.
At IPFW, the Alumni Association does a lot more than raise money and support sports, as we'll find out on the next edition of IPFW Up Close. We'll discuss the annual Higher Education Day at the Indiana State House with the Director of Alumni Relations, the President-elect of the association, and an IPFW professor who knows firsthand what it takes to be an effective lobbyist. Join me, Jeanette Liu, for IPFW Up Close, Sundays at noon on College Cable Access Channel 56.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Time now to have a little chat with one of our student athletes here on campus. And this week, we welcome to both IPFW and to Mastodon Spotlight freshman Carlos Gonzalez from Monterrey, Mexico.
Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Welcome aboard. Monterrey, Mexico. This is Fort Wayne, Indiana, USA. How did someone from nice and warm Mexico find their way up to cold and snowy Fort Wayne?
I know. I don't even want to think about it. I don't know. First of all, I finished high school in Mexico, and I always wanted to go and play in the United States some tennis. So I tried looking for an international foreign exchange student program. I put my application to find some house in Florida or California, something warm, and they ended up me sending to Ohio. So I was in Ohio last year. I played a couple of tournaments. I played in high school there. So coach came in and see me over there, a couple of tournaments. So he recruited me, and it was a good option. So I decided to come here.
Truthfully, what are your impressions of Fort Wayne?
I really like it. I mean, it's cold and the weather, and everybody says that, but I mean, it's a nice city. It's nothing compared to home, but I mean, I'm having a good time. I like the school, and I like the people here. It's really nice. I'm having a good time.
What is your field of study here at IPFW?
I'm a mechanical engineer.
My youngest son started out in that. He didn't finish, so I wish you well. I hope you'll be able to continue and complete your task.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Now let's turn to tennis. I know I asked this off air before we started. In Mexico, you didn't play high school tennis per se. You played more club tennis.
Yeah, it's kind of it's like a national league where you play for your state, and then some kind of regionals and sectionals. It's more focused to more like where you train, like you represent where the club you practice on. So that's basically what I played.
Looking at numbers from some of the matches you've played this spring, it seems like you're solidly entrenched at number 2 singles and number 2 doubles. First and foremost, what do you like better, singles or doubles?
I prefer to play singles because it's all about myself. So if you play good, it's up to you. If you play bad, it's all your fault. So that's what I like the most.
Now we'll put you in the hopper, so to speak. What do you feel is the best part of your game, and also what do you feel is the part you need the most work on?
Well, definitely the best part is my forehand. I really like my forehand. I think it's the shot that gives me confidence. I'd say that the part that I need to improve is probably mentally a little bit. Sometimes I just go off in the matches and come here, come different places. So try to work on my mental game a little bit.
Let's take that one step further. How do you prepare for a match? Not just physically, but mentally as well.
Actually, I try to think some like different matches that have happened and try to focus on different aspects on the game. Just like try to focus on the ball instead of focusing on the score. Like I don't know, some bounce and hit, some kind of different things to do while I'm doing the course. So I can keep all my attention to tennis wise. So don't go and thinking a lot of stuff. So that's what I do mainly.
This may sound like a crazy type of question, but do you prefer a short rally or a longer rally to get yourself loosened up as the match goes on?
Well, I prefer shorter or long instead of like if I win it, it doesn't matter. If I win the rally, it's good. I mean, definitely a longer rally. If you win at the end, it's more good for loosening up and everything. But I mean, definitely try to win the first couple of points in the matches. Gives you more confidence and let you stay loose for the whole game.
Let me ask another question, and it may sound a little bit technical. When you're in a match, do you think more about your strengths or do you think more about your opponent's weaknesses? Or do you not think about either of those two?
That's a good question. I would try to make a point to try to hit my best shot, try and probably run around a little my forehand, try to protect my weakness and try to play my strengths. I don't know. It's a tight moment in the match, so you need to worry about yourself a little bit more than what the other guy's going to do. So,
would you consider yourself a baseline player or a serve and volleyer?
I'm more of a baseline. Trying to work a little bit of my game in both, but definitely baseline.
Hopes, goals, and dreams for your first year here at IPFW?
Hopefully end up my season in a good way. I think I'm playing good. I feel good. Just keep practicing and trying to improve myself. I'm really happy with the results I'm having. So just keep practicing and hopefully win one conference match or something. That would be really nice.
Well, we wish you well, both on the tennis court and in the classroom. Welcome to cold and snowy Fort Wayne, but good luck here at IPFW.
Thanks a lot.
We've been chatting with Carlos Gonzalez, freshman from Monterrey, Mexico, member of the IPFW men's tennis team. We'll take a break and come back with more of Mastodon Spotlight in just a moment.
What's ahead for the future of Northeast Indiana? One answer lies with the graduates of our fine area colleges and universities. Hi, I'm Phil Laux, president of the Greater Fort Wayne Chamber of Commerce. And when you support an area college or university, you support the economic growth and development of where we live. Graduates of these higher education institutions are working hard to grow our local economy. I urge you to support your area university or college with your time, your talent, and your treasure. Our college grads are a vital part of Northeast Indiana's continued success.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Hope you enjoyed our chats with both Eric Burns and the freshman Carlos Gonzalez from Monterrey, Mexico. Busy week again here on the athletic front this coming week. Men's basketball, I mentioned earlier, only one game. It was actually played on Tuesday night against newcomer Division II power Florida Gulf Coast. We'll tell you about that both on Mastodon Spotlight next week and on the Doug Noll Show here on Channel 56 next week as well. Women's basketball, 2 games in Texas. Thursday night they're going to take on Texas Pan American, and then on Saturday they're going to be at Texas A&M Corpus Christi before coming home to play their final home game next week, Monday, against Wright State. Men's volleyball team, 2 matches. Friday night, Ball State, 7-2 overall, 2-0 in the conference, come to town. If you can't make it to the Gates Center, tune into Channel 56. Neil Day and I will be happy to bring you all the action beginning at 7 p.m. Then on Saturday night, not televised, IPFW will entertain Findlay College. So 2 matches on the volleyball front this week. Our baseball and softball teams are headed south to Tennessee. Weather permitting, they'll get their seasons underway this weekend. And our women's tennis team is traveling this week. They have a home match on Friday against University of Detroit Mercy at the Warsaw Racquet Club. And then on Sunday, they travel to University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. That's it for this week's edition of the show. Thanks for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW Athletics. We invite you to come back next week. We're going to preview the upcoming softball season with head coach Keith Fisher. That and more on next week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight. But until next week, for all the coaches that come and help us and for our sponsor, Ryan Steakhouse, this is Mike Maas saying, have a great week and go Dons.